Thank you.
All right. Mr. Smollett? Mr. Smollett? Jeez.
There we go. There you go.
All right. I think our electronic issues have been resolved at this point. Okay. All right. Ready for the minutes? Oh, yeah. We are on, hold on, adoption of the bylaw. Okay. All right. Yep. Okay. Next on our agenda is the adoption of bylaws. Okay. So where were we with it?
So how do we word it so that we have an abundance of participation and we don't limit anyone from speaking?
Sign-up forms shall be completed by prior to speaking by all persons. If the intent is to get the demographic, the name, residence. And do we require that speakers be county residents?
No.
I don't think so.
No, we don't.
Well, because of my past experience as a military spouse, I would say sometimes you have a vested interest in a place even if you're not a resident there at the time.
Well, our neighboring counties are experiencing out-of-town, school buses full of out-of-town people clogging it up. Maybe we could say priority shall be given to county residents.
Any thoughts on that comment?
Probably lock it down to county residents only.
I don't know if you can legally do it.
Well, I think we went through this before. Mr. Kendrick, I'll look to you, or Mr. Williams, Mr. Myers. Even I know in the past we tried to do that. I believe there's a prohibition on limiting it to county residents.
Can't quote what or why, but that seems familiar. But I don't know that one or two exceptions maybe where we get a sizable number of out of county people talking anyway. And I've just not known it to be a problem.
It's typically a developer, right? I mean, it's
you developers and I remember the data center had several folks from out of the county who came in talking about the opportunity for employment for them.
Yep.
And then I think I remember someone speaking kind of like a warning about the data centers. Actually, those were
it was only a handful.
Yeah, it was only a handful of folks.
I still want to see people sign up. And that can be done here, or it can be done by just simply notifying the planning office that they wish to speak, and then give people the opportunity to, on a as time allows basis afterwards, to go ahead and speak, by exception. I guess I haven't seen the need.
If we're going to require people to sign up on a roster for this, or we're going to have a mechanism for people that are online, we routinely ask if there are people online that have comments that they want to make. They're unable to sign into a roster.
That's the by exception thing at the end. You get a few. And as long as they state their name and their address so that we know whether they're a county resident or not, then I'm still okay with that.
Can we just change the wording to say sign-in forms shall be available for persons wishing to speak? And that way, the intent there's for us to keep a record of it. We keep public records of everybody who speaks anyway. They're supposed to say their name.
Yeah,
And that way, it's not a shall. It's just those sheets will be available.
I much prefer that. It's less restrictive to people. We can get their information afterwards.
Okay. All right. So, is there any more discussion on that? Denise, would you like to make a motion on that?
I make a motion that under section 4, order of public hearing A, we reword it to say sign-in forms shall be available for persons wishing to speak.
Motion is made. And
That's part of that clause already. And I think we can strike if requested out of the previous highlighted section.
Yeah, I didn't mean to not include the rest of the statement.
I think we should also say that sign-in sheets to include name and address.
It actually says printed name, phone number, address of person wishing to speak, and application number of the issue be addressed.
so that request should be on the sign-up sheet.
Yes.
So it's kind of self-explanatory. Should be. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So do we need to read this motion again in its proper context?
I make a motion that we change section 4, order of public hearing A to say sign-up forms shall be available for persons wishing to speak, listing printed name, phone number, and address of a person wishing to speak, and application number of the issue to be addressed.
Okay.
Second that motion.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right. It has passed unanimously. Right. Okay. All right. So we also need to vote to adopt the bylaws. All right. We have one.
Start time is, I'd like it earlier if possible. That's not always.
Yeah.
I have one more issue.
Sure. All right. So I think he is, when he's talking about start time, talking about the start time of the meeting itself, moving ahead an hour from the 7 o'clock start to the 6 o'clock start. Is that correct? Okay. All right.
I would just ask if that has any effect on staff. Yeah, that would be better for us, actually, ma'am.
At 7?
I'd rather stay at 7 if we could. Just getting here is tough.
Same for me. I work an hour north. I mean, I could do 6:30 probably, but not 6. Not to make it more complicated.
Can we bump it to 6:30? Well, is it every half hour is a half hour earlier home?
6. Seems like we have a meeting almost 6:30. Sounds like a nice compromise. All right.
I move we change the starting time to 6:30 on the second Tuesday of the month.
All right. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Raise your hand. All right. All right. Adoption move passes unanimously. Okay.
It was.
I apologize. There's one day.
You're contrarian. 7 has worked well for a long time. It allows people to get off work, go home, grab a bite to eat, and then come to the meeting. But that's the end of 6:30 it is.
I apologize. All right. Okay. I think you had another.
In regarding board membership, I'm going to recommend that we add, the board currently requires that commissioners must be a resident of the county. I propose that the Commissioners should be a resident of their respective districts. A resident or a landholder. Shiloh, Dahlgren, we have some of our neighboring jurisdictions facing this now, with a concentration of board members living in one part of the county. And I would additionally invite consideration to making one at-large member a member to be appointed by the county manager as an employee of the county. And the second at-large member be either a board of supervisors member or a designated member of the board of supervisors, with the goal of improving communications between those two critical stakeholder groups. For example, the county manager may like to nominate economic development or service authority or whatever issues the county is confronting that can bring their perspective. And similarly with the board of supervisors, so their priorities are known to us relatively.
All right. So you've threw a little bit at us here. My thoughts on people being within their reach or within their section of the county. We all sit on this board as one, regardless if it affects your area, my area. It all affects the whole county. So in that aspect, my personal feelings is that if you live in this county, you should be able to serve no matter where you are. And if I have anyone that has any to oppose that thought, the mic is now open.
I would comment that you've got 5 supervisors and one of them at large. Each is allowed 2 selections to this body. Now, if you want to expand it to 12 so that you can pull in people from other areas, I don't agree with that, but that's the only way I would vote for it. I mean, if you take them away from the at-large, you're impacting one of the supervisors.
Same function, same set of constituencies.
I mean, the base is a very important part of this county, and
Absolutely
we're well aware of it.
Right.
But I don't know that they should be nominating people to sit on panels as such. In fact, when I was working,
Base?
who did you say you wanted one of them done? The captain?
No.
Who?
Board of Supervisors. Board of Supervisors, either one of the supervisors is a member or a designee. And the other one,
Oh, I'm sorry.
county
I
manager,
misunderstood what you were.
not the base. But yes, we could have, theoretically, we could have 10 commissioners from Hopyard, 10 from Shiloh, or 10 from Dahlgren. And without this additional control. And with growth and concentration, I'm trying to anticipate the challenges we're going to face with growth. Growth is inevitable. And ensuring that special interests and local interests don't dominate the discussion for the county. Now, we have neighboring jurisdictions that are facing this exact problem now.
I can understand the logic in, wanting to have commissioners from districts live in those districts. I don't follow the logic with the at large really at all. Maybe you can expand on that.
Well, without expanding, and I don't agree with expanding beyond our current number, it's a way that actually
The proposal again with respect to the at large commissioners.
the proposal is basically that each supervisor, except the at-large, or the at-large can do it too, in coordination with the county. But the county manager has a rep on the board of his or her choice, and the board of supervisors has a rep. Because right now we're not communicating. It's ad hoc. It's not intentional. It's
You feel the need to enfranchise the county manager to a greater degree than they're currently enfranchised. Is that your point?
I'm seeking improved information flow to the planning commission and the execution of our duties from these groups. Now, Virginia statute permits this, and in fact encourages it.
Let me just read, under section 1, members, C, one member of the commission may be a member of the board, and one member may be a member of the county government.
We can't
The
even.
term of each of these 2 members shall be coextensive with the term of office to which he has been elected or appointed, unless the board, at the first regular meeting each year, appoints others to serve as their representatives. So we have something in our bylaws that talks to this.
Right.
How would you change it?
We permit it. Well, the state permits it.
It's permitted. We're just not exercising.
We're going to
Mr. Chairman?
institutionalize it.
Yes.
So Senator Stewart, interim county attorney, he's ill, but he is watching online, and he just sent me a message, and I've got that section of State Code 15.2.22.12 that you reference. Senator Stewart, Matt, this is the purview of the supervisors, not the planning commission. So that is the guidance from Senator Stewart that the appointment of specific individuals should be delegated, and it is the purview of the county board of supervisors.
And please let Senator Stewart know that we're making this a recommendation, as all our decisions are, to the board of supervisors.
Mr. Myers.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Myers, I think you had a Mr. Myers, you had a comment?
No, I was going to say, I think that's a supervisor's.
Okay. All right. All
I
right.
move and recommend to the board of supervisors. The membership should be constituted according to that.
So if you wish, please make a motion.
Make a motion, we recommend to the board of supervisors that the composition of the board should be according with the commissioners should be resident of the districts to which they are appointed, and that the one member be appointed by the board of supervisors, be a supervisor or appointed by the supervisor, and one member be appointed by the county manager or his or her delegate.
Okay. Motion has been made. Do I have any seconds? All right. See that there is none. Your motion has fallen short of a second nomination. So therefore, it is a none. Takes no votes. Okay. All right. All right. Next on our agenda, do believe is election.
Question real fast. Do we? So I did get behind the first part of that, which is requiring you to live in the district to which you're nominated. I wouldn't want to second the second part of that. So I don't know if we want to discuss an abridged version of the motion.
I'd second that.
I mean, I think it's common sense that we live in the district in which we represent.
In full disclosure, I believe I am the only representative up here does not currently live in the district in which they've been nominated. I was nominated by TC for the James Monroe district, and I live in Shiloh because he could not find people at the time that wanted to be on the planning commission.
Never mind.
So,
I mean,
so I would have to.
So I think we've taken this issue up. Your motion's been made. We have declined to make a second. I think we're ready to move on. All right. Okay. Yeah. Next, electronic participation policy. Okay. Open for discussion on that.
Hold on, I think we still need to do a total review of the bylaw.
Oh, do we? Okay. I'm sorry. We're still on bylaws. All right. We have next that.
Just if there's any other.
All right. Are there any other changes to the bylaws that any recommendations at this point?
I make a motion that we approve the bylaws as amended.
All right.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, show of hands. All right. Unanimous, to that the adoption of the bylaws be accepted, and that is now closed. All right, next, electronic participation policy. Okay. Open for discussion.
Rarely have anybody that does it. Normally it's if somebody's on travel or gets sick.
I think we leave it as is.
I don't know, we put a lot of thought into this
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
I don't have any issues with it. It's not abused.
Not at all. Yeah.
I would like to have some clarification about exactly how we deal with those personal matters. There have been a couple different meetings over the past year where I have not been in the county. I was in a position where I could have participated via telework, via Teams or via electronic mechanisms.
Well, honestly,
I was told that just being on travel and being out is not an acceptable personal matter.
it's one of those things where, as Mr. Parker just said, it's something that we've never had an issue with as far as being abused.
Okay.
If you say it's something personal, then we trust your integrity. And
But there's just been times when I have not been in the county. I've been out traveling since
yeah, again,
mostly retired, and I travel more. But I would be able to partition my time
Yeah.
to where I could participate.
Yeah.
I will bring that in the future. I will bring it to the board at a time, and we can follow the procedure that's laid out there that says that you all get to vote about whether or not it's adequate for me to participate.
Right. I don't think it's written in there, but the way we've used it in the past and my understanding of it is if you're not here, there's things you can't hear. There's stuff that happens during a meeting that make it tough to vote. If there's something that we've been working on for months, then I think it's appropriate, we're informed and we know to vote. So we've so far, I think we've only used it a couple times.
Right.
And it's been on times when we've been leading up to a vote. Maybe we tabled something this month and you're out of town next month and you come in and use it. But just for a regular meeting, I think you miss enough while you're not here. And our electronic is getting better. So I think as that goes, it may get better to where we can do that. But it's nice to have most of it happen here.
So you see, I'm not suggesting that I would abuse it and be on travel every month, but so are you suggesting that I not try to do that next time? Because it says that you bring it up and the rest of the commission votes on whether that personal matter is sufficient to allow you to
I think
participate
everybody
electronically.
we've had on the commission in my time have been well-meaning, thoughtful, people who, if they don't think they've got enough information, they might hesitate to vote or abstain. I think leaving it to our respect for each other is that if you want to call in, it's certainly anybody's privilege to do so. And everybody occasionally gets caught out somewhere else due to other requirements and things dragging on their time. But if you're listening in and you don't think you're catching all of the conversation, then I leave it to that individual to say,
Then I can abstain from the vote if I
Yeah.
don't think I've got
Correct.
sufficient information.
Correct.
All right.
Or conversely, if we needed a quorum to move something important, then we would ask you, if you're able, can you sign in, cast a vote? And
Thank you for indulging the question. We will deal with it as it comes up next time.
I would point out, if anybody didn't read this real closely, if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, and we've talked about them in terms of, it doesn't say it in here quite this way, but if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, you're done.
Right.
And if you miss 4 in a year, you're done. And I believe that's really at the discretion of the supervisor who appointed you. That last part, I'm not 100% certain of. It may be within our ability to do that internally, but I've never known that to happen either. Most people are pretty conscientious, and I think this panel, as it's currently constituted, is conscientious. So I'm not concerned about it.
All right. Are there any others?
I was going to make a motion that we adopt the electronic participation policy as it stands.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, just show of hands. All right, and say aye. All right. The policy has been accepted. All right. Mm, and it's now closed. Next, the adoption of the 2025 meeting schedule. And I think it's on page 21 of the packet. And I think it's in consistency with what the schedule we're currently on. So, all right.
The only
Which-
change, Mr. Chair, was that the November meeting would have to be moved as that Tuesday is a holiday. So I
Okay.
proposed for Monday. And I'll change the time to 6:30.
All right.
Would anyone object to changing that to the Wednesday? That way, if we have a 4-day weekend, we don't have a meeting in the middle of it.
Fine with me.
All right. Any objections on that recommendation? Okay. All right. All right. So I guess we can take that as a motion from you.
I make a motion that we change the November meeting to Wednesday, November 12th.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands. All right. So I think that is being recorded. And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of times we don't even eat in November. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think we just now need to adopt the schedule.
All right. So, if I can have a motion to adopt the whole schedule.
Motion to adopt the 2025 meeting schedule as modified.
Second.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hands. Aye. All right. Unanimously accepted. All right. I think we're ready for the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes for December 10th, 2024. All right. Take a moment to scroll through. No objections. All right. If there are no objections, if I can have a motion to have the minutes accepted. Awesome. All right. Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor say aye. Raise your hand and say aye. One abstention, which is 2 abstentions. I apologize. Okay. All right. Okay. Next on the agenda is our citizen public comment period. Comments will be limited to a 3-minute per person to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we're asking that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Right? Do we have? All right, we've got our clock to your left, our right, and if you would please state your name and I think your address is appropriate. We will begin.
My name is Gary Butler. I'm not a resident of the county. I want you to expand your thinking on who's got to sign up to speak. I've been here since 1959. I own Exit Realty Expertise. I give thousands and thousands of dollars a year to the county, giving back to the community. And I pay a lot of taxes in the county through the business. And I think you should make uh, public comment available to the most expanded opportunities that you can present. There are also a lot of absentee landowners that aren't residents of the county, but they own land in the county and they pay taxes in the county. So just throw that out for your thoughts. I'm a former member of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm a former member of the Planning Commission, and I'm a former member of the Board of Supervisors. So I've been through all of this. I've been through a comprehensive plan review, been through rezonings. The text amendment that you all have been asked to discuss, hold a public hearing on, and make a motion and a vote to the Board of Supervisors. I would like to be able to engage for about 20 minutes to a half an hour in a discussion with you about it. Unfortunately, in a minute and 35 seconds I have left, all I can do is hit some bullets. Talked with a lot of people, talked with some of you all. Growth in the county seems to be a concern, but if I was to ask each one of you, what is our growth rate in the county? The most common answer I get is 10%. Fact is, it's 2%, 2.3. And in a county of 28,000 people, if you can't manage 2% growth, then you're not managing. And the tax ramifications, if you rezone the county, 91.4% of the county, everything in green, is zoned agricultural. It's the strictest zoning in the state of Virginia as far as density allowment is in there. 2 acres and 10-acre zoning for A2 and A1. Nobody else has 90% of their county zoned that much agriculture. There's no R1 zoning in the county that isn't already built out, like Hop Yard. Hop Yard is now sold out. That's going to slow growth tremendously in itself. Infrastructure is part of the reason they say they want to stop subdivisions. Well, agriculturally zoned land doesn't impact infrastructure. It has its own wells and its own septics. I could go on and on and on. The tax rate in King George County is only 68 cents per hundred, the lowest in the Fredericksburg area. So we're undertaxed. Nobody wants to raise taxes, but that's a fact. Well, 3 minutes goes by fast.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Butler, for your comments.
I'm going to send a letter to each one of you to where I can have half hour's worth of reading material for you on it. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And I would suggest also that your next, when you have your public hearing, you move it somewhere like the high school auditorium because there'll be a whole.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Thomas U. Washington. I'm at 6255 Windsor Drive. I'm a retired colonel, combat veteran, and also a realtor with Sampson Properties. Our family has owned land in the county for over 300 years. That's 9 generations. In addition to that, I'm speaking for 2 brothers now that own property at our same farm and several cousins, and we have numerous nieces and nephews, all of them landowners in the county. The Washington family is not familiar with this current A1, A2 rezoning amendment or text measure or process. I, for instance, just found out about this 3 days ago, thanks to Gary, by putting it out there. We don't know what the reasoning is behind this other than growth is the issue. But there's been no notices, no mailings. I think we have to do the push to the county to get the information instead of a push-pull kind of thing on correspondence and any kind of thoughts or measures on any changes to A1, A2 zoning. Our family is completely against any changes. We're currently very satisfied with the A2, A1 zoning as it is, and anything that is an adjustment to that from what we're learning is, in our opinion, an infringement on our land rights. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Washington, for your comments.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission members. My name is Alan West. I live at 8700 Trumpet Court, and I'm a taxpayer and a business owner in the county. And I don't have enough time to explain all the reasons why I oppose the proposed text amendment. And I understand there are issues the county faces and have to deal with budgets and growth and all those kinds of things. But this text amendment is not the right lever to pull to try to make changes or solve all your problems. And I think that there should be an in-depth review as to why, what the ramifications are, why the board came up with this. And I'm sure you guys will look into it deeply. I want you to know that myself and people I'm sure that are here would be happy to participate in any committees or group meetings to try to get to the root of it and try to come up with solutions that create a win-win situation. I'm happy to help. I did call down to the community development office today to find out how many single-family building permits there were issued in 2024, and the number that I got was 153 single-family dwellings, 205 occupancy permits. Some of those might be additions and some other things, but 153 building permits. That's what we're talking about in the county. That's causing all the problems. Really need to look into this. This is something that generations are going to have to deal with. And I hope that you'll really dig into it and look to people in the county for help to come up with some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioner. My name is David Gripsover. I'm from the Dahlgren District, 2293 Nancy Lane. I am a third generation resident of this county. My family has been here since the 1970s, and we've continued to call this place our home for ever since my grandfather and my father before me. I'm here to oppose the new text rezoning of the agricultural districts and kind of share my side of the perspective as the younger generation in King George County. So far, the county's offerings of affordable or temporary housing has been rather abysmal compared to surrounding counties. My wife and I have spent the last 2 years looking for an opportunity to stake our claim in King George County to make this our forever home, just like my family has done for the last few decades. This housing shortage, along with the market we find ourselves in, has made it difficult to find land and stake our claim here in King George County. And these proposed amendments to the agricultural zoning would make that increasingly more difficult. This would make it nearly impossible for many of my generation to get into land ownership into the county and continue to offer ourselves and our service to this community as we have done so for many years. We're the next generation of your public servants, your service members, and employees that are going to work at your new tech centers. We have just as much right to be here as anyone else, and we are the ones who want to continue to keep the values of King George County the way they have been, and the way we've been proliferating them over the last few years. We, like many others in my generation, are planning to build on these agricultural regions that make up so much of our county. And as mentioned by Mr. Butler, these regions aren't a burden on the county. We pay for our own wells, our own septic systems. Many of us don't even utilize the public schools. Many of us are professional job workers, pay our taxes, do everything that's necessary to help contribute a net positive to the county. I would just ask that the board and everyone listening take a moment and consider that it's easy to make these dramatic decisions when all of you already have your land, your property, ranches, farms, whatever it may be. But take a moment and think about this next generation of King George residents who are looking for the same thing, looking to lay claim to our part of King George County, no matter how small, and give us a chance to maintain our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gripsover.
Good evening. My name is Jim Buckley. I live at 5306 Piney Green Drive in the county. When it comes to planning, whether it's economic, housing, transportation, or even military planning, or any other type of planning that you do, one must consider the area of operation, in your case, the county, and the area of interest, those things that lie outside the county. your adjacent counties and what's going on there, what you can and cannot control. But part of this is too, is I want to direct your attention, and maybe you've already seen this, to a November 2023 study, and it's a rather extensive study that was prepared by economic experts for the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, titled Housing and Economic Development Strategy for Virginia. You can find it online at vhc.virginia.gov. And I just read you very quickly the executive summary. I think you may find it interesting. In a competitive landscape where regions and states race to attract both talent and business, the value of housing affordability and availability is becoming as important to the local workforce as skilled workers are to employers. Inadequate housing supply hampers workforce mobility, limits job opportunities, and negatively impacts a state's economic competitiveness. If appropriate housing is not available, firms will face challenges attracting new workers from other states and possibly lose existing workers who may be driven away by rising costs, like you heard from Mr. Gripshover over here. Impactful economic development plan needs to be matched with a well thought out housing plan to be successful in this environment. This report offers insights and recommendations to guide policymakers and stakeholders in fostering sustainable economic development through housing initiatives for the Commonwealth of Virginia. You want to be part of the team, guys. You're not an island, and neither is King George. You have to know what's going on to the left, what's going on to the right. If you don't do that, this will be a fouled anchor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
Good evening. My name is Scott Cleveland. I live at 6020 Potomac Landing Drive, and I've been a resident here for about 20 years. I've been up and down the banks of the Potomac for probably 50. I'm definitely disturbed by the text amendment to Division 4. You look at what's going on in the county right now and the amount of growth that we have, the zoning is working. All the zoning that we have, the money that we've spent in the past, the comp plan, are we actually abiding by the comp plan, or is this just complete destruction? And we have just over 300 people a year that move into this county. That's not a lot of people. I mean, the zoning continues to work. I think it's just over, Gary said just over 2%. I think it's between 1% and 2% growth that we've seen over the last couple of years. I mean, that's an average, I think, one person every 300 acres or so, once you talk about the increase in density. Looking back at what I do, and I'm a real estate broker with Remax Supercenter here, so not only do I live in King George, but I own the franchise here. We talk to people every day. I'm working with a couple right now. Their family has owned property in King George for nearly 100 years. And they're taking a small parcel, 30 to 50 acres, and they want to cut it between their brothers and sisters to be able to sell it and go buy their own home. They don't want to live next door to each other, but they want to go buy their own home. Based on what this amendment's going to do, they have one lot. They can't even divide it. They can't do it. Even if they want to sell a parcel off, they can't. They're stuck with it, and it's worth I'd say 30% of what it's worth if you continue to keep the existing zoning. The zoning we have in the county works right now. It is not easy to develop property in King George County. You're limiting growth. We're growing by 1% a year. So I just want to make sure that you all take this into consideration and give it some serious thought before you follow anything that has to do with this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bob Baird. I'm a resident of 15316 Kings Highway in King George. My family has been here for over 300 years. And I have over hundreds of extended cousins in the county, dozens of families that are related to ours, most of them in the Shiloh district. Throughout our family, we have accumulated land over the years, and we've kept it as part of our heritage. Not big acreage, could be 20, 30, 40 acres. as we've maintained as part of our heritage. We want to perhaps pass it over to our sons or daughters. The regulations prohibit it, extending it beyond family subdivisions. We cannot give land to our nieces, nephews, aunts, or uncles. So that prohibits us to extend the gift of land to extended parts of our family if we wanted to. How many people can afford to maintain 20, 30, 40, 50 acres anymore and put a house on it? This precludes the young people from investing in large lots like that. We need to have them have the opportunity to have smaller parcels. Also, as a senior citizen, I'm concerned about what you're doing by precluding me for perhaps selling small parcels of our land to raise our retirement income. You're taking things away from our residents that have accumulated their wealth over the years, and land is part of our family wealth and yours as well. I urge you to vote against this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
I'm Rose Payne. I live at 15123 Hazelnut Lane. Like the Washington family, the Payne family has had farmland since the Civil War. I have been in this county for 86 years. I don't mind you knowing how old I am. I am totally baffled on why you want to change this. Farmers aren't developers. And I understand that you're trying to hold down the development because our schools are overwhelmed. I understand all of that. But I don't understand why you want to penalize the rights of property owners, trying to tell us what we can or cannot do with the acreage that we've had all our lives. I don't get that. I need to know more about this. I am totally opposed to this, and I think it is very wrong that you're even considering changing that. If you have a farm that's 100 acres, only 2 buildings can go on that because you got to have 50 acres. And I thought about young people, and I just heard one. They can't afford land in the county now. You're going to make it impossible for our young people to stay in the county. I'm too old to be considered young anymore, but I pay a lot of taxes. Believe me, I pay a lot of real estate practice taxes. I live on one farm and have cattle on another one. So it's not like I'm not supporting the county. I just don't understand why this is a good idea for citizens of the county. And I am grateful to Gary too, because I did not hear about this until a couple of days ago. Where's the transparency that I keep hearing from these, and from the Board of Supervisors? I think you need to really think this through. I've not heard anything but opposition tonight. And I guarantee you, if more people in this county knew exactly what you're planning, you'd have a whole lot more opposition. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you will really consider this because we are not for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rose.
Hello, my name's Katie Evans, and I'm a Khmer. I've only been here 10 years, maybe. I live in a subdivision back off of Gambo Creek. There's like 20 houses. And I'm trying to understand what's going on. I heard about this. God, I don't even know how I heard about it, about a week ago. And I've had people explain it to me, and The only thing that I really caught was as you increase the size of lots, you devalue their property because they can't split it up anymore. And those of us in subdivisions are on an acre, 2 acres, maybe less, as their taxes will probably stagnate or go down because their value of their property's gone down. We're going to be having to pay the bulk of the taxes on our 1 acre lot because theirs is being devalued, ours value's going up, so our taxes are going to triple. Well, I'm about to retire. Can I afford to stay in King George? I love King George. It's beautiful. I have chickens. First time I've had chickens. So please delve into this, really examine it. All the people that said, had good points. Please think about it before you vote.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Baird, no relation to Mr. Bob Baird, but I'm going to make some similar comments as him. One thing I want to mention that Commissioner DeCorda, is that how you say your name, mentioned earlier, he said that growth is inevitable. All right, so if it's inevitable, why are we trying to stop any growth? Urban sprawl, as we've all heard that phrase before, usually relates to residential districts, not agricultural districts. By the way, there are no come heres in King George. That's only a Northern Neck term. I had a business in the Northern Neck for 10 years, so I can say that. I've been a resident of King George for 15 years. My wife and I bought 35 acres. 7430 Dogwood Lane. We bought 35 acres with the intent to build our family farm, horse farm, our estate, our heritage. Under the current zoning, we would be able to cut off 2 acres for our son. Under the proposed increase for the A2 zoning, it'd be 20 acres. Well, that means I have to have 40 to be able to subdivide to give my son anything. So if this gets approved, you just killed my opportunity for my son. Also, with regards to the farmers, I'm a wannabe farmer, again, horse. I'm a land surveyor by trade, so I work with a lot of farmers. And I see over the years how family farms, the younger generation may not want to continue the farming, so they end up selling the property. Well, by doing this amendment, you just significantly decrease the value of that property. Or even if it's the farmer who said, okay, I've been doing this, we've been doing this for generations, we're finally done, we want to retire. And they want to sell the property. So again, you're significantly reducing the value of that property by changing the zoning minimum lot size. Also, just as far as land management, you have a bad couple of years as a farmer, and you need to pay bills. So what do? You cut off a couple acres here, a couple acres there. You do it to make ends meet throughout the years. So I am definitely opposed to this new text amendment, and I would ask that you submit that to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
My name is Coombs Campbell. I live in Vernon Woods in King George, Virginia. One thing that I'm getting, and a lot of people have been saying, and this was my reaction, I just found out about it this couple of days ago. Nobody seems to know where this came from. There was some slight reference to infrastructure. Has the planning and the work of the county been so bad that we have to penalize the people who live here? in the resolution that the Board of Supervisors put out, it says, whereas the board is of the opinion that public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning warrant the consideration of this amendment. Public necessity? Nobody has ever bothered to explain why it's publicly necessary to take people's right to do with their land what they had always planned to do, to be able to sell it, to prevent young people from being able to come in. I'm not sure I see how that's a public necessity. Convenience was another reason that was put in this resolution they presented to the people. Is it convenient for people not to be able to utilize and sell their land? As you've heard so many cases, they've always planned for young people and other people to be able to come in and own land. Are we the county that says, don't come in, we don't want you? A little scary. General welfare. Well, let's see. If the tax values are going to go down on all those 50 acres or more properties, the value goes down. That means the real estate tax is going to have to go up. Or they now have over 5 acres. So let's see, why don't we get land use tax relief? Which means they will pay less tax because they have more land. So that means that somewhere we haven't done anything to help the situation. And it's good zoning practice. It's hard for me to understand that infringing on the rights of people is good practice.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. All right, yes, are there any others? All right.
My name's Perry Bowen. I'm a farmer here in King George. Moved here 25 years ago from Culver County. I'm at 17518 Nanzatico Lane, Culver County, Maryland. When I graduated from college in 1984, there were 16,000 people in Culver County. When we moved to King George in 1999, there were 85,000 people. Mr. West, other statistics have been quoted. You've got growth well under control here. What you're talking about is simply a taking, and I am happy to meet with any supervisor or anybody, any of you commission members, and discuss my experience. We lived through 2 downzonings in Culver County back in the 90s. What you're basically asking to do here is not going to solve the growth problem, because everybody has a building permit or a buildable piece of land will run to the county and get the building permit as soon as this passes. So you'll have a huge jump in growth. And then the problem that you're solving is 25 years from now, you'll have no growth, but you'll also have a retirement community with no opportunity for the next generation. So anybody who's listening in Hop Yard and thinking, hey, I don't want the schools to be crowded, that's not a problem. They won't be crowded because the kids that you're raising and loving and adoring, okay, won't be able to go to school in King George County because they won't find a place to live. So if you want to turn King George County into a retirement community, then pass this. Otherwise, the system isn't broken. It's working really well. And please carry on with what we're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there any others? All right, going once. All right, are there anyone online at this time? All right, no one's online. Okay. All right, being that there are no other speakers, we will now close public comments period at this time. And now open discussion on the public comment for the board.
So I think there's a lack of clarification throughout the county on what is being proposed would impact landowners and what they can do with it. I'm not speaking in support or against it right now, but um, Ms. DeLute or Mr. Smolnick, are there any points of clarification you would want to add in regards to the comments we heard?
So first of all, appreciate everybody coming out. This was an initiating resolution by the board back on November 4th of 2024 at their public meeting. They directed staff to look into this, and at that meeting, if my recollection is correct, that's whenever the acreage amounts were discussed. Now, talking with Kelly Leduc here, she's gone through the zoning ordinance, and without putting a number on it, I think she's identified 50 plus parts of the ordinance that would need to be amended if these three numbers are changed for the A1, A2, and A3 districts respectively. So it's just not as simple as changing the number. There's a whole domino series of changes that will need to be made. And I understand that this has been in the public. I believe there was a meeting maybe last Friday at Mr. Butler's office. And I've got some phone calls, talked to some people on the streets. Matt, we're thinking about coming out and talking. I'm like, great, come on out. This is what the public process is about. As far as specifically drilling down, is this the final number? This is the direction that staff was given from the Board of Supervisors with these specific numbers. And in my 20 plus years of local government experience, I'm always trying to get to yes. As a zoning administrator, you sit there and have code, and you can't do this. You want to do this. How do we get to yes? So I think that's where we're at, with the discussion brought on by all these citizens and, through the commissioners and, ultimately through the Board of Supervisors. I think this needs to be a working relationship with all the entities, staff, including citizens and PC and board. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that specifically answers your question, but I just wanted to shed some light on maybe the brief history on this, what staff has looked at. And we are waiting further direction from the Board of Supervisors. I know their next meeting is January 21, and I expect some folks to come out to speak at the Board of Supervisors also. But that's the direction that staff's been given. We're working on it right now. Kelly's working on identifying those areas that would need to be changed should any of these numbers be changed to whatever they need to be. But it's just not one section of code that needs to be changed.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if we're going to discuss this more later on the agenda. It's listed, but just to reply to I get really excited when people get involved in the community decisions, and so to have this kind of turnout, I think is really important. I will say that as far as transparency, we were so early in the process of making a decision here that we're still trying to ourselves identify the problem and then determine what the solution might be. And so I want you guys to know that, normally once that portion gets defined, it would go to a public hearing, which would be advertised. And, we're not at that point yet. So I just don't want anybody to think that we were going to vote on this without the community's involvement or knowledge of it.
I want to second that, the vice chair's remarks. The public participation is essential. Mr. Butler, I wanted to remark that the giving preference to residents would also include taxpayers, business owners, and other stakeholders. I wouldn't think of excluding them. I would like to let everybody know that you're all here, which is wonderful to see. The comprehensive plan is coming up for renewal this year. I don't know if it'll be within the next 12 months, but the process will begin. And your input and anyone who wants to volunteer to participate in that process. These are decisions about where do we want the settlement areas, where do we want concentrated high density housing, and where where we really want to protect for recreation, agriculture, and the things we value. But your input is critical. These plans endure for 5, 6, 7 years before they're revised again, and they control many of the decisions this body makes. And we encourage as much community participation as we can get. And thank you for being here again tonight.
So just to add a couple comments, from viewing, listening to the previous board meetings, I think the intent here is not necessarily, again, and I'm not speaking in support or against this, but just trying to clarify. I don't think the intent of the board was to prevent a lot of what y'all are concerned about, what would be prevented. For instance, to the gentleman who was worried about not being able to split off 2 acres for his son, I believe what they've discussed would be written in a manner where you would still be 100% allowed to do that. I think the intent here is to prevent a developer from coming in, buying essentially 50 acres, splitting it down to 10 houses right now within, if it's zone 5-acre lots or whatever, right? And effectively create a neighborhood without offering proffers to improve the infrastructure that would then go to that neighborhood. Now, I could be wrong. This is just how I've interpreted what the board has been discussing, but I don't think it is intended to stop you from using your land how you want to use it right now. But again, I could be wrong. So
I'd like to propose that we make a subcommittee to involve the stakeholders and the supervisors in hopes that we can
Yeah, that's later on in the agenda.
what's that?
That's later on. We've got that's down in the agenda there. All right. Are there any more comments from the commission? I just think this is one of those things that we heard 12 people speak against it. I agree with all 12 of them. If we're going to go about doing this, there's got to be a better way to do it than this. And I feel like this is probably one of the most draconian measures that's come in front of us in the 10 years I've been doing it.
Maybe having a board representative on the commission.
Well, again, I mean, and so to your point, Mr. Court, I think part of it is there seems a lot of this has been driven by a lack of transparency. Like we found out about it last month, but it was kind of in a passing comment, right? So I'm just learning what one of the drivers for it is. And again, if that's what an end goal is, I think there's a better way to go about doing it than restricting property owner rights.
Yeah, we also received a letter from the president of the FAR and against this. I know Dixie Washington, a longtime broker in the area. A lot of these people, even though they didn't say, are realtors and experts on land. But that entire community, me included, is opposed to the way they're trying to solve this problem.
I was going to hold my comments until we got to it in the agenda, but I'll go ahead and jump in now since most people have already commented. I really don't like the way this has come about. I think this needs to be a holistic review of what's going on. We need to take a look at some of the data, some of the things that Mr. Butler brought out. What is our real growth rate? What is our real number of applications that have come in? What is the plan? What percentage of the county are zoned in these types of zoning? What is the size? I'd asked last month to get some data about how many of the tracts of land that are in these zones even fit within these categories. How many people are already less than 50 acres in some of these? You know, we may be absolutely preventing people from doing anything else with their property, and that's nothing that we should take lightly, taking away people's property rights. This really needs to be done in a comprehensive fashion, along with, as Mr. Kendrick has brought up a couple times, we're really delinquent in getting started in our process of reviewing the comprehensive plan. We need to be looking at where do we want the developments in this county to occur. We have a shortage of affordable housing. We need to find out a place where we can get some affordable housing. We can't just shut it down blanket across the entire county. We need to take a look at that in terms of where it impacts infrastructure, in terms of water and sewer, take a look at school systems and where those things need to occur. Where do we want commercial infrastructure? This needs to be a holistic look in the comprehensive plan, not just a quick reaction to fix something that we're not even sure what it is we're fixing, at least at this point.
I echo that. Even go a little further. It feels like a preemptive strike for a problem we haven't even really experienced yet. It's heavy-handed. It does, to my mind, I'm not commenting on the legal nature of it, but it does kind of feel like a taking of sorts, since you're depriving people of property value that they could otherwise monetize to a greater extent today. So I think we really ought not to be rushing into anything. We can't be short-sighted about this. It requires a step back and a very comprehensive review, in my opinion.
Just to add to the comments of my fellow commission members, it feels like we've jumped to a solution without understanding the problem. And I don't. I'm looking forward to ongoing conversations and discussions so that I can try to understand what we're trying to accomplish and why. I'm not seeing it yet. So for the public, you know, it's just a big question mark in my mind right now. So I would encourage every citizen who's got concerns to talk to their board of supervisor, who represents where they live, and see what they can tell you. And by all means, go to their meetings and listen to their discussion. One of the things we're supposed to do in here and they're supposed to do is discuss things in a public manner so that the citizens can hear it. If you can't make a meeting, check them out online. You know, go back and read the minutes of their meeting. I mean, I'm looking forward to understanding more because I don't understand it now.
I agree. I think we clearly need more information on the why. Here, from what I understand, it's infrastructure, mostly schools and EMS, from what I understand. If that's the case, I think we would be better. It takes a lot of work to change permanent zoning. I think a temporary injunction or something, if it's absolutely needed, short term without changing the zoning would be an easier way to get that if we do need that and exceptions can be made in that injunction for things we would still need. So at this point, I think we're in a fact finding and we just need to find out more information and more of the why with the problem.
All right, are there any more comments from the commission? All right, I will end with this. My fellow commissioners have spoken and they all have spoken well and bringing out valid points. But as the vice chair stated, we are in the early stages of a due process that you all, or 12 of you, have participated in this evening. And all of you are entitled to participate in. Like you, we're looking for the why. We're looking for significant answers that will help guide or give our suggestions to the board of supervisors. Right? That's our role. Is to make suggestions based on facts, based on evidence, based on information that we're given. And so we will do our due diligence in making sure that is done and done to the best of our ability. And I will conclude with that comment. Okay. All right. So discussions on the public comment is now closed. Next, our community planning liaisons officer, naval support facility, South Potomac, Dahlgren, Mr. Lynch, if he's here. I see. Is he here? Don't go anywhere. It's already. So it's Mr. Lynch.
All right. Thank you, sir. I actually have no further comment, but I do like to offer my congratulations for your chairmanship and look forward to working with you in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next public hearing, there is none. Next after that on the agenda is old business. What I am, well, what I'm gonna ask, because this has been presented to us. I want to ask that we be as limited with your presentation as you can be. Um, if you can do it within 10 minutes or so, that would be wonderful. Um, so with that being said, updates from the applications on the applications Z 2024 through 00184, Gibson Solar Special Exception. You're up.
Good evening. Thank you. Ryan Gilchrist with Open Road Renewables. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission for having me back this evening. I will absolutely keep it brief. Tonight I'll present on just narrowly on 3 topics from the questions that came up last time. And I sent you all the response to comments last week. So hopefully that was a good primer for this. The first topic is how the preservation of the land will occur. The second is just the 2 minor forms of impact on wetlands. And then the third is just a follow-up on how the landowners plan to harvest their timber. So on the permanent preservation, as a recap, if the solar project proceeds, 70% of the land will forever be preserved. And this is unique to the Gibson Solar project because we're purchasing that the bulk of the land versus a lot of projects that would do long-term land leases and don't have the control over the land. It's accomplished, and this was the open question, how it's done. It's through a restrictive covenant, which it's an agreement that is actually tied to the land, so not to a specific owner. And the two parts that I would highlight is number one, so it's attached to the deed, and then number 2, it has to be recorded prior to construction is the way that we're presenting it. So it's in place before we do anything to the land. Any questions on the permanent preservation before we move on to wetlands?
I have a question, and please don't interpret this favorably, unfavorably, any which way. It's really just for real edification. The true benefit to the county in the long run is essentially when the project ceases, and you decide you've had enough selling solar power, you take down your panels, and we are back to beautiful agricultural ready land in a sense. Does the project either proffer or structurally convey any sense of when you no longer wish to operate the project? I mean, is there a concept of abandonment in there? So you get out 30, 40 years, your technology is now outdated, you decide you don't want to sell, you don't want to raise finance to try to re-put it, put it all in again. So you just leave it for a while. It just sits there for 3, 5, 10 years. Is that concept of abandonment somewhere in the structure or anywhere? If you could clarify, thanks.
So the decommissioning bond is the condition that I would point to. So there's funding in place for the project to be fully decommissioned at any time, and that would be including if it's deemed not operating. The permit itself is also only good for 40 years. So at the end of 40 years, the project would either have to reapply and either that or it would be taken down based on the decommissioning bond.
Okay, but is there any time frame around so-called deemed abandonment of the project? You're not operating, but nor are you decommissioning, kind of thing, something in between.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I understand. And that's something that we would put in the siting agreement that goes alongside the special exception. So that's one of the clauses, abandonment. One thing I'll point out is though, this project, it's generating electricity at a very high value. compared to the maintenance costs. So if something goes wrong, there's a very high incentive to fix that because you're selling electrons to the grid.
No, I totally get that. But you're talking about a long life cycle, a long project cycle, and we all know that technologies come and go. And if it's feasible and viable, I'm sure you'll continue it. But at some point, they may take a decision that it's not worth rehabilitating or updating the project, and that's where I'm coming from. So I think you've answered the question reasonably well. But I would just hope that the community development staff and the county would take note of that issue going forward. And what is deemed abandonment of this project, at which point they have to decommission if they're not running. Thanks.
Yep, I'm making a note of that to just make sure that's well covered in the siting agreement, and we'll speak with staff about that as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. So there were questions regarding the specific impact of the project on streams and wetlands. So first and foremost, the surface structure of the project will not impact any streams. The picture you're seeing here, this is what it would look like if there was a cable, an electrical cable that had to go underneath the wetland to connect to islanded solar fields. So we'd be using this horizontal directional drilling. The only exception is if it's a several 100-foot run where you'd have to come up for air in a very specific spot to change direction, for example. So that would be, a fraction of 100th of an acre just to put one little piece of equipment there. The other type of impact would be for the road crossings. So let's go to the next slide and then I can talk. Cool. So the road crossings are the only above ground structures that would impact wetlands. This would be accomplished by these under this. Sorry, I'm mixed up on the notes here. Okay, so this is again where the solar fields were islanded, and you'd have to access one from the other. It would be a narrow dirt road or gravel road that would connect the two fields, and the crossing of these streams or waterways would be perpendicular, and that would minimize the impact area. And they would include culverts that would maintain the flow of water. So I do have a couple pictures of those culverts on the next slide. They're pretty common in rural areas. You can see these pipes where the streams continue to flow underneath the road, but you still have the minor road that crosses the area. And I'm trying to speed through it a little bit here. That's why I've skipped a couple paragraphs. But if there are specific wetlands questions, then I'm happy to pause on that as well.
I do have a couple comments since I was the one who brought up a lot of the wetlands concerns. I did take the language. If you go back a couple slides to the condition language that has been proposed, yes, right there, the third bullet. I sent that language to Mr. Stewart and consulted with him, given his experience with wetlands and DEQ and a bunch of things. If you look at his resume, he's got a pretty extensive background in wetlands type of information. So I reached out to him, and he felt that this language in this condition was pretty good. He has not gotten back with me with any additional suggested changes. But I will tell you, if I look at the map, there are two areas that I'm very concerned about with this wetlands and how you're going to get through it. If we go to the map again, yeah, it comes off of this section that's on the west side of the development. You're actually the connection that goes from these three isolated blocks that go all the way back across Route 3. That's a long run through there, and you're going right down the stream bed if I looked up the RPAs. So I assume that's one of the areas where you're talking about where you won't be able to avoid them. Is that correct? And then the only other one that I could see was on the eastern side, where you've got in your bigger map, you've got a road crossing marked 11, 12, and 13. It looks like you're going to be crossing through quite a bit of wetlands in that section. It's not on this map. It'd be in the bigger maps in the appendices. But I've personally got concerns about those, but I will leave the review of that, as you've got in the conditions, to the proper authorities to review and monitor that. But I think with this conditions, I've got nothing else that I have concerns about with the wetlands. I think you've covered it with this language.
Absolutely. And you pointed out one of the spots where that would be horizontal directional drilling for several hundred feet. It's not shown on the map here, but that line changes direction maybe 3 times before getting to Route 3. So those are the points where you would have an above ground structure that would be needed to actually reroute the cable. But besides that, it's all directionally drilled underneath the wetland.
Yeah, the concern is your directional drilling is along the line of the wetlands.
Right.
If you look at it. So you
Correct,
have
but-
to be in there with equipment in the wetlands drilling for quite a distance. But again, I will leave that to the experts that you have stated there in your conditions to review and monitor that in accordance with the state policies.
That works.
I went to the expert and he said your condition sounds pretty good to him. So
Yeah, well, and that's the beauty of that technology. You can get directly underneath the wetlands, go for several hundred feet without impacting the surface. And only when you have to make a couple turns, do you actually have to do anything that would impact the wetlands. Otherwise, you're way below the stream bed.
But we're all watching what's going on Route 3 as they're apparently burying cables all the way out Route 3, all the way to Fredericksburg. And it looks like they're popping up about every 150 to 200 feet, not several hundred.
Right,
So
and it depends on the diameter of the cable.
depends
and,
on how much
yeah.
they're burying.
Yep, absolutely. So the last topic is on timber. So as part of the response to comments that I sent in last week, I provided Michael Bobb's surveying report, which showed the delineation between the areas that would most likely be harvested immediately and the areas that he's recommending to harvest within 10 years, as long as the landowner follows the recommendations. So he also helped us just gain an elementary knowledge of the timber market. And we learned that basically all the timber has value today. That center bar there is the approximately 30% of the site that's recommended for immediate harvest. It's pine saw timber. It can be used for large posts and large lumber. That's valued at about $23 per ton right now. Even the timber that is not ready to harvest and would be in 10 years, that's the bar on the right there, which is called chip and saw. And that's valued already at $18 a ton. And that's the wood that is used for 2x4s on the interior, and then the exterior of the tree is all the pine chips. So even in areas where the recommended horizon for harvest is still 10 years out, the landowners would still see incentive to do that immediately if the project were to move forward. There were some questions last week about whether the landowners would actually harvest. So that's what I covered on this last slide here. We had a chance to reach out to, there are 6 landowners who own land that have timber on it that'd be part of the project. The rest are all the open pasture land. The primary parcel that would be affected is the area with the green there on the right side of this map. That's owned by the Payne Trust. And we spoke with Greg Payne, who owns that land. They planted their pines 20 years ago, and they're getting ready to harvest it very soon anyway. So he said, irrespective of the project, they're going to go ahead and harvest. We had similar responses from all of the other landowners. You can see the map on the next slide. The green areas on the right side here, that's Jim Fogg's property, and then the Roberson tract. And those both confirmed as well that when they get the surveyor's direction, they would follow that direction, whether or not the project moved forward in a couple of years.
Just wondering again, how many total acres are you planning to log?
590 acres are forested right now.
Thank you, sir.
We've not discussed, or if we have, I've forgotten it already. Is there a phased plan of what sections you're planning to build out and how you're planning to build those out?
That
I've
would
not seen any representation of that in any of these maps.
Yeah, that is not. This is still at the 10% in the design phase, or even less. Once we move into the 30% design drawing or later, then we start to look at exactly what areas would be constructed first.
Okay. You don't at this time have a phased plan.
Not at this time.
And you expect the total duration of this construction to take how long?
Approximately 18 months, but the beginning of it would be things like the substation. So you'd have construction concentrated in one area, and then you'd have each solar field every couple hundred acres would be rolled out after that. So you'd have the pile driving over here. That would take a couple weeks in one particular field. You move on, same thing. So each section just takes a few weeks to go through each.
Okay. So you believe you can get through this entire project in approximately 18 months?
Correct. Yeah, there's a strict deadline when we have to come online. And one thing we'd ask you consider is moving forward with the public hearing next month, unless there are a lot more questions. It seems like we've addressed most of them, but that's what we're seeking tonight, if possible.
Yep. All right.
I have one more question.
No.
You listed 5 projects in the local area. I think one of them was in Culpeper. I checked on the Culpeper one, and it wasn't rezoned, but it's approved, but it's not built. And that was several years ago. Can you speak to why that one's not built?
Yeah, you know that one project.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Mike Volpe, Senior Vice President, Open Road Renewables, one of the co-founders. That project is called Greenwood Solar. That project will commence construction later this spring and be online within 18 months. That project received its special exception permit in the fall of 2018. And as a result of market conditions, that project has faced economic challenges that has delayed the construction start of it. But as we understand it, there's a cliff date in the interconnection agreement, and there's a cliff date in the special exception or conditional use permit that has to move a shovel by this summer of 25, and that will start construction later this spring.
Could you email us the addresses of those projects just so I can
tell them all. I can go right now through them if you'd like, or I can email.
An email would be great.
Perfect.
All right.
I'll make a note. We'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Question for staff. Is this application considered complete and ready for a public hearing?
Yes, sir.
It is.
I want to thank the applicant for your continued responsiveness to the specific questions and your explanations in a clear layperson's ability to understand them. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you for your
All
time.
right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. Commission, we've heard the response to our questions in the previous meeting. As he just stated, they are requesting a public hearing. Do I get a motion for that request?
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure. Yes, sir.
This is more to staff. I understand what the project is, and I'm not opposed to solar energy per se, cleaner alternative energy. Where I'm having an issue I'm trying to define in my mind is what are the benefits to the county, because the electricity produced here will go onto the grid. So it's not like it's serving just this county, it's just going out on the grid. From a revenue perspective for the county, can you explain what we could expect, or maybe the general manager or the manager, if you understand what I'm asking? From a tax perspective, what do we get?
I'll defer to Ryan, but I'll just say that that's a full-blown study that they did present as part of their application, which you'll definitely get a copy of that. And I don't know offhand, I don't have it all with me.
It's about 20 million over 40 years. It's broken out into 3 buckets, roughly 2 million of that would be from the real estate taxes, about 12 million from the taxes on the equipment itself, and then the remaining 6 million in voluntary payments.
So the equipment that is installed is taxable on an annual basis.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify that.
And that's 500,000 a year above and beyond the current taxes that are being paid, or that's total?
That's
Or that's
total.
just equipment?
Currently, though, I want to say it's less than $100,000 in taxes for the entire tract. So it's multiplied by 30 times or so.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments or questions from the commission?
I look forward to the staff's analysis and recommendation.
All right. We need a motion. So at this,
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, do we normally vote for a public hearing when the applicant requests it, or I thought staff usually scheduled it?
well, we have to make a motion to have it. So if I can get someone to motion for a public hearing.
I believe we've run this through a number of times. They've been back and answered all the questions that we've been able to come up with, at least at this point. I think it's time for this to come in front of the public hearing. So I make a motion that we move this project on to having a public hearing.
I need you to state the application. Is that correct?
Okay. I make a motion that we forward application Z2024-00184 Gibson Solar Special Exemption for a public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Raise a hand. All right. Motion unanimously passes. A public hearing will be, I think, later done. So, and that date is to be determined. Is that correct?
We can get it on next month's agenda,
Very well.
February.
Okay.
I'm just looking, it looks like we've got a request for 3 public hearings next, or which would be a lot for one meeting. So we just be mindful of the planning commission.
So yeah. So okay. All right. Next, again, same request if we can keep this to a minimum. Update from applications on application Z-2022-00021 and Z-2024-194 King George Technology Center, Green Energy Ventures Data Center, rezoning and special exceptions.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Hobie Mitchell. I am the managing partner for Green Energy Ventures. Last month, we were asked a number of questions. First question was about the data center building details. We showed a footprint. If I can relate to slide number 3, if that's possible. Okay. So on this particular one, you saw the overall, which is in the, to get my little pointer here. It would be easier for me to stand up. I appreciate it. I got fractured neck and other problems, so it's easier for me to sit down if that's okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'm so far away now I can hardly see it. So on this overhead on the last, you saw we have a building pad, but you want to know what was within the pad. So what we try to do with this exhibit, I also have an additional exhibit at the end if we can we'll refer to this after this. So within each building footprint, you'll see we use a typical building 8, which is a 2-story building. You'll see all the components that are generally inside of that footprint. Includes emergency generators, other equipment, battery storage, all the internal mechanisms of the servers themselves, and the HVAC equipment on top of the building is on top of it. But this particular area is used for parking, for emergency generators, storage, which is generally below the generator. So whatever type of storage it might be for fuel, whether it's diesel, natural gas, compressed gas, or other forms, would be below those generators. There's another detail on the extra slides, which I sent actually yesterday. I don't know if we can get to that one. It's at the very, it was a supplemental. So here was another example of another project. As you can see that the building footprint is that you saw earlier was this entire area, and within that entire area, you see you've got parking, the building, emergency generators, and other equipment that would be on the outside of it. The main road in our case, which would be Route 3 Kings Highway, everything on that elevation would be, you wouldn't see any mechanical equipment from that road or any other emergency generators. Site lighting and other things would be provided throughout the site according to the ordinance. So here's an example. The distance, by the way, between these buildings ranges anywhere from 125 to about 150 feet. So the scale is you got a pretty good sizable area between the buildings.
If I could ask one quick question, when you say these buildings that are close to 301, they're going to be 2-story buildings.
Correct.
Is it 1 story of server and the second story is the HVAC and
No,
the other?
2 stories of servers.
2 stories plus the HVAC.
Correct. The HVAC units will be on the roof and they'll be shielded with screening, and we have a cross section of that in extra slides. We talked about that the last meeting. We can bring that up if you wish.
So do we have, I see we have the fire chief here. Do we have any concerns with buildings of that height having equipment effectively 3 stories up?
Well, we recently, we're going to resubmit this in our package. We've been talking with the fire marshal about that. Right now, you have a proffer from AWS for a fire truck. There's no guarantee about what will happen with that one. So what we did is we restructured, and we're going to put it in this week. We restructured the proffers so that we're going to contribute $2 million for a fire truck. We'll put $1.25 million when we have the first building permit, and then the balance of $750 at least a year before you take delivery of a fire truck. So you'll have $2 million to purchase a fire truck.
Okay.
And so
We have the fire chief sitting there behind you. I just want to make sure he's got the proper equipment to get to these roofs, because we're going to have actually 4-story buildings with the ones further back, right? Because they're going to be 3-story plus HVAC to get on the roof. Right?
I think the fire trucks that we were talking about providing the money for would get up to that 90 feet. And we had some suggested language. We distributed it just the other day. And of course, when we're finished with our comments, we'll get final resolution of that. But we understand that. And so we would provide the equipment to do that to the fire. Now, in addition to that, we'd also contribute $2 per 100 square feet on an annual basis of occupied space. I don't think that's been done before here in King George, but that could provide at build out $140,000, $150,000 a year in annual cash flow as well. That's in addition to any tax revenues or anything else collected. So that's all extra. So the next question we had was about if there's any more questions on this. The next question we had to deal with transportation. And if we can skip over that and go to item 6. On the last meeting, our proposal was in our proffers to provide turn lane improvements and other miscellaneous things, including accelerating the VDOT 6-year plan for improvements to the intersection of Bloomsbury Road and Route 3, Kings Highway. I always use numbers still. Yeah, so we would do that improvements that were already in the VDOT 6-year plan and accelerate that. But we'd also do warrant studies at phase 1. We do another warrant study that's on intersections 1 and 2. We do another warrant study, 2.5 million feet, and we do another one at build out. We believe that that signal would be warranted in the first phase. It's really needed today. The second intersection 3 would be our main entrance, and that we would also proffer to do warrant studies for that particular traffic signal in phase 1 at the beginning, also at 2.5 million feet and at build out. But the question came up, well, what can we do to try to eliminate a traffic signal or all traffic signals on Route 3? Interesting, that was a discussion we had with VDOT. And by the way, we have our traffic engineer here to answer any technical questions here as well about what I'm explaining. So if we can go to the next slide. So we try to analyze what would happen if we try to eliminate a traffic signal at the main entrance. So we looked at another design that's called an R curve. So you can see some blow-ups of that. In fact, maybe Mike, if you want to stand up and kind of explain the design of that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Mike Warkowski. I'm with Wells and Associates, and we prepared the initial traffic study, as Hobie mentioned, and we're working on the comments we've received from the county staff and VDOT staff. One of those main comments was focused on the arterial network of preserving that along Route 3, minimizing the number of traffic signals. What is shown here is a full restriction at both Bloomsbury Road on the eastern side of the page or the right-hand side, and then the main entrance point, which is right in the center of the page at intersection 3. So these intersections would operate with left turns in from eastbound Route 3, but they would be right in, right out. So you would turn right out only from the north side of intersection 3, travel down to intersection 4, U-turn and continue to go east, much like occurs at some of the crossovers that are out there under the current conditions. This is the western part of the property. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So I think the next slide shows the eastern portion. So this is over Bloomsbury Road. There's a similar condition there that would need to occur, where you would, only turn right. Left turns could come in eastbound going across, but over to the east of that, there's a farm property there with a crossover. So that would have to be modified to allow U-turns at that location. So the previous plan showed how the blow-ups of the restrictions kind of on the western side of the site, that you can see the main entrance and the driveways that are further to the west. And this one shows how they might work further to the east.
So this particular, this is the Bloomsbury Road where we had a traffic signal. This could possibly work, and we would have to submit this at the site plan stage with VDOT to see if they would agree with this and see if we can eliminate a traffic signal based upon our land plan, based on this plan you see right here. And if VDOT would approve this and it's acceptable to county, then we would do this in lieu of a traffic signal. The same thing occurs here at our entrance and at the next piece by doing this design, which would eliminate 2 traffic signals. We think that this still needs a traffic signal. And frankly, the best solution is probably to have a traffic signal here and then this, what they call R-curve design, where you don't need a traffic signal that we showed on the previous slide. So
do you know whether VDOT currently is expecting to have one of these restricted crossovers at Bloomsbury?
Like
we're going to have an awful lot of angry county citizens if we restrict that. Because people coming in there, going to the dump, they're coming from the rest of King George County, they turn right, and then you're going to make them turn right and go all the way down to your intersection 4 before they can make a U-turn and go back home.
Commissioner, we agree. And so, but we were asked to analyze it. And so that's what we're doing. We have a conclusion about what we think is the best result. So, and that'll be on another slide. We were also asked at the last meeting by Commissioner Kendrick about why don't you put the main entrance on Bloomsbury Road? So if we can go to the next slide. So we did a lot of engineering studies, and one of the bigger things that comes up is that you have some major takings. By the way, right now Bloomsbury Road is a prescriptive easement. It's not a dedicated right of way. In our application, we're going to dedicate a 60-foot from the existing center line, which is really on the property, so that you can do a half section of a 4-lane road. Right now, your transportation plan says that there has to be a 4-lane divided road. Currently, right now, it's a 2-lane road on a prescriptive easement. If you had to widen this to 4 lanes, not only would you have to have a traffic signal here, but another one here on Bloomsbury. But the bigger problem is we'd have to condemn, which the county will not do, all this right of way, which would include probably 2 houses as well. I don't think the landowners there would be very happy about that. Even if we could work around it, there's still a lot of traffic that would occur here. And if we can figure out a solution to minimize having just one traffic signal, which we think is safer, and then have that R curve design at our main entrance, which is specifically for us, we can eliminate a traffic signal. So if you can go to the next slide. So our solution, we think, works the best, but it'll have to be approved by VDOT, obviously, is that a traffic signal there, phase 1, we think the warrants are there today. And then for the entrance and other accesses, we do this R curve design, which would eliminate a traffic signal. It also keeps the traffic volumes down here so that this operates at a better level of service. And that for us, for our traffic, we can utilize this and eliminate a signal. But again, we have to have that approved by VDOT. And so our proffers would say, we'll put in the traffic signals, we'll submit a design for these R curves to eliminate a traffic signal here and here. We think ultimately this is the best solution, but we'll have to go through that in a site plan process. But we did look at Bloomsbury, and it's really an impractical type of solution, and eliminating a signal here we think is too confusing for the general public and not safe, as this would be. So that, if you have any more questions on transportation, but I think we had a very good meeting with the county and the VDOT last week, and our proffers and everything are coming in this week that reflect all this, including all the transportation analysis about how they function well. But we think that Commissioner Kendrick, I think this is a good solution for eliminating one of the traffic signals and keeping this safe. You really need one here today anyway.
So just as a general comment, this entire area, not just the parcel you're planning on building on, this entire area is zoned for industrial, or could be zoned for industrial. So having a traffic light that serviced sort of that entire area, I think, is a very logical thing. Let me understand about your comment about Bloomsbury and your sketch that you provide on page 9 of your handout.
Sure, you can go back one.
That's based on the idea that you're taking land on the east side of Bloomsbury. What about if you took all of the land necessary for the road out of the parcel you're planning on building on?
Mike, I'll let you answer that question, from a technical standpoint.
Well, I mean, it can be done, but there's so much tapering that would have to occur to come in and out to pick up all the lanes. I think you'd still be taking further to the north and able to accomplish gaining those lanes. That's really where it would come down to, I think, is that entrance would probably have to shift further to the south in order to be able to fit the tapers that you need to go back and forth. So is it physically possible? I mean, it could be, but it'd be pretty awkward, I think, to be able to have the tapers and meet the spacing requirements out there.
I think the other thing that it affects too is we're trying to dedicate 18 acres to the county for service authority work to put in potentially water treatment facility, maybe some other things. If you scoot over that much, it really affects this parcel that we're trying to dedicate to the county.
Well, that goes back to another comment by me. Your parcel seems awfully tight for the amount of construction you're planning on doing on it.
Well, it's pretty typical of how it works with the data centers. I know there's a lot goes in there, parking, internal roads. So while you see these footprints, there's a lot within those footprints. You have parking, you got emergency backup generators, you got mechanical equipment that would be on the ground, parking, service vehicles that would be able to park in that same footprint.
All right. I still have concerns about the traffic, but go ahead.
So this is based on our proposal for the development, including the footprints. There was a couple other questions related to the site lighting. We're going to work within the existing ordinance. Dark skies is required, so we have to build the ordinance. Same with exterior noise levels. We're proffering to the ordinance. Plus, we're going to add to it some annual monitoring for compliance. So there'll be some extra proffers dealing with compliance of noise. And the one thing we talked about in certain times of the day, the existing noise level on Kings Highway is a 70 dBA. So we have to come up with a model because we're profiting less on the site than what the existing is. So we have to come up with an adequate model for monitoring all that. But they do have technical models in order to do that. Now, it's not in the evening. You don't have a lot of rush hour. Those higher levels are generally during the rush hour traffic. But the existing right here is about a 70 dBA. As far as where we're at in the process, Clark, I think you want to go through all that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, new chairman, members of the commission. I'm Clark Lemming. I'm just going to bring you up to date with a few developments. As Hobie mentioned, we will be resubmitting the application this week with revisions to proffers. One other note on the proffer, Hobie talked about the noise proffer. Really, the issue there is not the noise. You have a noise ordinance. The issue is how do we measure it? How do you keep track of it? And that requires a noise test. So that's what the proffer will address. As Hobie also mentioned, we've worked with the fire marshal this week to update that proffer and to come up with funding that can be utilized at the fire marshal's choice for a new fire truck. And we don't go to a third floor until such time that money has been paid to the county. So that is hopefully in place, and we've spent some time discussing that. There's been some discussion, and staff has pointed out some things about our proposal to use a groundwater well. And we've had a discussion initially, not for operations, not for cooling. And that's the way the ordinance is set up. So we have, to clarify that, we've gone to your zoning administrator, Mr. Vaughn, and asked him to review our proposal and determine whether it is consistent with your ordinance and with state law, so that we can proceed with that first step with use of a groundwater well for limited purposes for a limited period of time until it's possible to tie in to your to county water. In addition, when we made our last submission, we did include a proposal for a text amendment because of the way your ordinance is set up now regarding height. So there has to be some way to get above what your ordinance says right now for data centers to work, not just this one, but other data centers looking at King George County with active applications. So we have some proposals, and we're asking for the board to initiate, as they did with your ordinance a little while ago, pass an initiating resolution to start that process to relook at the height provision so that under certain circumstances, additional height can be attained. The major one of those would be the ability of the fire department to reach those higher levels. So those are the things that we're working on. We will have all of that back to the county by the end of this week, and And we hope, and I don't know if you want to talk about this, Hobie, but you all move forward with the public hearing with the group that was before us. I think you're aware that we would very much like to move to public hearing as well. We have another submission coming up. So it may not be possible, we recognize, in February, but we would like you to focus on it, focus on this for at least March and make whatever decisions need to be made to help that occur. And we're happy to come back to you in February and give you another update as to what we've done based on what we've told you tonight and our resubmission to the county staff that will go in toward the end of this week.
Yeah, and frankly, with our submission for this week, kind of memorializing all the discussions we've had in these last few items, we're hoping that the staff concurs with that. And because I think we've addressed many of the questions that came from VDOT as far as the height and the servicing for public safety. I think us adding some extra dollars up front so that could be used, you're certain to get a fire truck. If you get a fire truck from somebody else and they come forward, then that money is still there and can be used for construction purposes. It could be used for other things in public safety. But initially, if you don't get a fire truck, we provided $2 million for that fire truck. Plus, there's an annual contribution on top of that. So we understand the public safety concerns. Chief Moody made it very clear to us, county staff has. And so we said, let's make sure the county gets a fire truck. So that's why we modified our proffers to reflect that, or you'll see it when it comes in. We've been, this will be 7 submissions. We've been doing this for several years. We started this process way before the zoning ordinance was updated. We've always been in the West Settlement area. And for comprehensive planning purposes, we've always been in compliant with that. We never asked for any modifications of that. We're working with the county on how we can figure out ways to get permanent surface water. Meantime, we figure out ways that we can get this going so we can become a good taxpayer. This project of build out generates a lot of money. And if nothing else happens, we will probably be the largest taxpayer in the county. And over a long period of time, I think it was a 30-year projection from Unicap, we would contribute almost $600 million in tax revenues. So, but we'd like to get to the public process. You've heard some things tonight from people. Let's get it to the public process. I think we've pretty well come close to getting everything done that the staff has requested. Now let's hear it from the general public. We've had 2 community meetings already. We'd be glad to have more. We'll do that again probably for a public meeting, but we really want to get this. We've been doing this for several years right now, and we'd like to see the Planning Commission at least authorize us to get to a public process. Appreciate your time.
Any questions?
Yeah.
In regards to the proffers, so the fire truck was, I think you said 2 million, and it's not on your proffer summary. Was it an additional bullet, or is it a change to one of these?
We wrote it this week.
Okay. We kept hearing about the height and about public safety and reaching it and what the existing equipment is for the county. And so there's no guarantee you're going to get a fire truck from a previous application. So we said, okay, we're going to step it up. We'll make sure you got money for a fire truck. If you so happen to get the money for the other fire truck from somebody else, then you can use this money for other things like building a building to put the fire truck in.
So the proffer would go to the county directly, or would it go to our fire department?
Well, it would go to the county, and then, but it's our proffer is allocated to public safety.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
Chief, I see your CIP asked for a aerial ladder truck. Is that the same thing? And that's 2.7. Okay, just for the record. Second question is your method of cooling. If not using water, is it just
air-cooled systems?
Air-cooled system, which
we're
are
not
generally
using water,
louder.
and we're not using groundwater. The only thing we're using initially, until we hook up to the county public water, is strictly for potable drinking water and probably humidification. We think it's in probably around 700 or 70,000 gallons per day at build out.
And is there any heat recovery system or cogen or?
Yes, we have a dry system for fire. We have fire protection on top of that dry system for the servers and probably a wet system with storage for occupied spaces.
And a question for staff, is this application considered complete at today? Then I suggest we take the question of scheduling a meeting when staff informs us that the application is complete.
We understand that.
Yeah, I concur with that. I'd like to see, they're making very good concessions and changes to their conditions and their proffers. It'd be nice to see us get that all kind of consolidated in a final submission before we go to a public meeting. We're hearing very good things. It's just nice to have it submitted.
We know you have a busy meeting, it appears, next month, but we're happy to come back to you for another 10-minute presentation to let you know what we've accomplished in the last month so you don't go into the public cold.
I mean, we were trying to, we understand about February, but I think we're pretty close and we'd like to at least see if we have an opening till March and act towards. And if you feel like we're not ready, then I guess we can withhold it. But we'd like to get on the calendar. We've been, we've been on this for quite some time. We're frankly a huge economic generator of revenues from the county. And this, outside of an unknown start of another application, is the largest economic development that you have in the county right now. And so I wish you would consider that.
Do we need to address the height issue first on this? If that's a non-negotiable on them?
Oh, you mean you staff question for staff?
Yeah. Angela can correct me if I'm wrong. Angela Ferrugi, our consultant, is going to be the main staff point of contact on this. She has been working on this application for a lot longer than I've been around, so she's going to handle the staff report. But it's my understanding that the text amendment can be handled concurrently with the application.
Well, we can always make that as part of the special exception as well, right? We've just passed forward the Gibson Solar, and it has things that are not in agreement with our ordinance, but they've written a condition as a replacement for the ordinance. So we don't have to specifically modify our ordinance to change its height restriction. We can do it for this particular project with a condition.
We're still waiting on a legal interpretation.
You're exactly right. There's more than one way to do it.
There's more than one way to skin this. We don't necessarily have to overall change our ordinance.
That is correct. That is possible. Yes. We have good Supreme Court case law on that now.
Yes, sir. So a quick question. How tall is the two-story building, including rooftop equipment?
80 feet. It's 65 foot to the roof, and then you have the balance is screening. And but the way that you define height is by the roof line, and then the screenings on top of that. And we use the screening for a variety of reasons. One, to screen what you see, but also for noise attenuation. So it's a good baffle for making sure that noise doesn't come off the buildings.
How tall is the three-story?
Three-story is 90 feet to the roof line, and then you have another 15 feet on top of that. And the 3 stories are internal to the project, so the two you won't even see them from the roads because they're all internalized. Because there was in fact, we can probably go to one of the slides. We did a cross section of what that looks like. It's in the package as well. So if you go to let's see, what is it? Slide, there's a cross section.
28.
Yeah.
Slide 28, 28 I'm hearing.
Yeah, plus we did some renderings. There we go. So you can see this represents the 2-story building, which I believe shows it at the total height, including the screening. But you also see along Kings Highway, we're also proffering for berms and also proffering for not only a heavier landscaping buffer, but also increasing the caliber of the size of the landscaping when it's put in initially. So this drawing represents, Andy, you're here. Is this a 5-year growth after planting? 10-year growth. So not only did we enhance it to kind of visually block what you see with the buildings, but we use berms, we use not only additional landscaping, but also a larger caliber of landscaping when we initially put it in the ground.
If you go to the next slide, it's illustrated.
Right. So this represents a 10-year growth based upon what we plan initially, plus the landscaping that you see. And this is from across the street on Kings Highway. So this is the entrance view. If you go to another view, next slide over, this is going westbound on Kings Highway, close to the intersection of Bloomsbury. So again, this represents not only a 10-year growth of landscaping at the time, we also added in some split rail fencing to kind of represent some of the history of King George County as part of the streetscape to add some extra architectural design to it, hardscape design. And I think there's one more slide. We even did one, what it looks like on the other side, on the south side of Route 3. There's some homes that are over there. So we did another rendering, say, okay, at 10-year growth, what would those 2-story buildings look like with the screening? And that's a representation of that based upon all the engineering constraints that we have. And then there was one more slide. This is Bloomsbury Road. So we're going southbound on Bloomsbury. We also proffered for berming along there. And so this represents what that might look like. This is closest to where we are showing the potential for putting a water treatment facility. In the county, just so you know also, we work with the Service Authority, but the Service Authority now is designing water and sewer engineering plans to connect Oakland Park with Hop Yard. And so the utilities would coincide along Bloomsbury Road as well. So we'll provide easements for that central system connections to combine everything from Oakland Park over there. And that's where we would connect our sewer into a force main system.
How tall are the substations?
Pardon?
How tall are the substations behind the 3 stories, just out of curiosity?
Talking about the electric substations?
Yes.
God, I'm going to best 50 feet. Yeah, maybe 50, 55 feet. But again, they're internalized. If you look at go back to the original, well, you can see it on this plan. So there we go. So the substations, and this has all been engineered, by the way, with Dominion Energy. So we're actually have a project manager on the engineering designs of that. So this is the best locations. There's 4 substations. They're all internalized. I will also say that we have avoided all the wetlands and the environmental setbacks along this. So we've avoided all that in our designs.
What has your conversation been with the power company about providing the necessary power to the site?
Well, we've got a commitment for them to do it, and they're actually engineering it. You know, it's several years away, but we've got some bridging power that we've worked with Dominion to get started. And, you know, obviously there's a timetable to get substations. The substation material supply chain is backlogged, but we have something to get started with to get the first few buildings going. And then the first substation will be this one. Actually, the project will probably be built from the east to the west, principally because the utilities like sewer and water and other things would be in this area. This is kind of where we're showing the water treatment facility if surface water becomes available. And so we would build it this direction. This would be the first substation. And then we would complete it out probably in this phase. Probably working along Route 3 first and then internalize after that.
Do you have any preliminary plans from Dominion about how they will bring in the distribution lines to you?
Yes, yes. In fact, the easements are already in place. We're coming from the north.
So you're basically coming across the existing industrial.
Yeah, there's a existing
industrial
easements right
buildings.
here, and they all tie into that 230 kV line eventually.
So you'll come through the existing industrial buildings and
Correct.
industrial
Correct.
sections, not through private land.
Correct.
So if I may, are we ready for a public hearing? We're not. Okay, so we should not then.
Correct.
I mean,
So do
Yeah.
we make a motion to postpone? No, you just don't make a motion
we don't.
to.
I still make the motion. Yeah.
Well, can we ask you for at least we bring it in this week? We think we've addressed a lot of things. We'd like to at least maybe get to the March agenda, and then if we find we got a problem, then we can always withhold that. But we'd like to get on the calendar
I can,
that you fill in. And
yeah, I can say that I, as a principal, wouldn't want to say yes to moving forward if it's not complete. And that's not anything against your project or anything. It's just as a rule, if we try to plan these things before applicants are ready, kind of sets us to have to do that in the future. So I feel confident, that when
Okay.
you're ready, we're ready.
Well, hopefully then maybe next month we've resubmitted. The staff has looked at it and said, yes, I think we're ready. And they can let you know that, next month you can say, okay, let's put it on March agenda. And because we really want to get it out to the public and get some feedback that they may have about it. Still continue to do community outreach. And so if there's any questions that come up, we'd be glad to answer them ahead of any public comment.
So for my clarity, as the rest of the board, so you want to come back in March to
Have a public hearing.
for a public hearing? I see.
Right.
All right.
I'm not sure we need to do another presentation to you. I think we pretty well have addressed things. We'll have the package in by the end of the week. And then if staff concurs, I can just tell you next month,
So,
listen, I think
exactly.
this application's ready.
Correct.
And then you can say next month, okay,
Correct.
let's put it on our March
Exactly. Yeah,
agenda.
and that's exactly what I was going to suggest.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest we don't necessarily have a presentation, but I would still put you on the agenda in case we have additional questions
Sure.
with your submission so that we can at least pin this down and take the vote on whether or not we're ready to go for a public hearing. So you probably still go on the agenda,
That'd be
but
good.
not
Okay.
necessarily a 20-minute presentation like we've
That'd be
had.
good.
Great. Okay.
Listen, I mean, thank you.
We appreciate it. And we want to be good partners with the county on this and looking forward to working with them on this project. We think it's a great project.
Very well.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, just let me make sure that we're all on the same page here.
Yes, sir.
Public hearing does not necessarily guarantee approval.
No, not at all.
We did several meetings with the last applicant for one of these that before we ever got to a recommendation to the
Correct.
board.
If I understand.
Want to mislead the applicant thinking that he comes in March and he gets an approval.
Correct. No, it's public hearing, and the public hearing is just it's part of the due process, right? And then
Good
we go
point
from
there,
there.
Mr. Kendrick. Right.
Excellent point. All right. Okay, so we're still on old business. Next, we have an update on the proposed ordinance amendments initiated by the Board of Supervisors. I think that goes back to what you were speaking on a little early. So who's coming up for that? To speak on that? Sure.
No, that's next. It's the last sub bullet on old business.
Sorry, I apologize. I apologize for that. Yep. Oh, okay. Okay.
Right,
All right.
I don't have any further information. It was just for a discussion item as to how, I think we had a pretty robust discussion on this earlier. So this would probably be some action that you all would take, as if you want to form a subcommittee or not. I think Mr. Smolnik's got a pretty good grip on what's going on and is probably going to have some more discussions with the Board of Supervisor members on
Yeah,
where to
I
go
think
from
the
here.
board needs to come through more what they want to get out of this before we can move forward with a subcommittee to work on anything. Speaking of Mike.
My thoughts are we could form this committee and it would meet more than once a month, and we could get with the supervisors, figure out what they're after, and involve the stakeholders to see if we can amend that subdivision ordinance to.
Do we need a subcommittee or do we need a joint meeting with the board to understand?
I would say a joint meeting might be the best thing to do, but right now, I mean, I think what's out there is not good, and the public is never going to buy into that the way it stands. Yeah. So to talk about throttling it back or modifying it or whatever, I would recommend for any board members listening, scrap it. Scrap it and come back with a succinct statement of what you're trying to do, and then gather public input to work around it from that point. But coming out with what they got, 50 acres on A1 is a non-starter. And I'm telling you, there's no, it's, if there's 5 members of the board that don't want a second term or another term,
Single.
put it in there. You know what I mean? That's,
Let's take this round. Mr. Myers, you have any comments on that?
Well, I just think, as I said earlier, if it's a temporary problem, we need a temporary solution, and we need to define exactly what the problem is, and then work on figuring out how to get around it.
Mr. Voss, sorry.
Go ahead.
I know that there was another ordinance that might have been misunderstood or needed amending. It's my understanding that there are people that have had issues with the family subdivision affecting them. I don't know that it's a bad idea for some of us to go through the ordinances now that they've been in effect for a year and look closely at them. And part of that process would be, if we're not excited about what the Board of Supervisors proposed, then it would give us a chance to find out what the problem is and possibly offer up another solution.
Mr. DeCarlo?
I agree 100%. There's other things in that subdivision ordinance that should be looked at, but I think if we come back and say we don't like it, which it sounds like unanimously, nobody in this room likes
Well,
it.
yeah, that's what I'm trying.
If we come back and say no, they can pass it without our consent.
Absolutely, we're only here for recommendations. Let's keep that in mind.
If we form a committee, then we can make a recommendation. We might be able to include what their goal is, which I'm not exactly sure, what that is. But if we go back, it might be something that would be very reasonable versus what we have now.
So do we need to go through and have a vote and say, no, we don't agree with this recommended text amendment? And put it back to them, or we just try to establish some working committee to come up with a solution?
We'll say noted.
Ask us to consider.
So I think we should just say noted. We are available to participate in a joint public meeting. We're available to work offline in a subcommittee to understand and address these problems. But process-wise, this Board of Supervisors has the full authority to do this with or without us. So if we say we oppose it, we get crossways with the board. We say we support it, we get crossways with the public, and the board says, "Oh, we're just doing what the planning committee."
So we do. I say this term a lot, and I'll say it again. We do our due diligence, come up with our conclusion, and make the recommendation, whether they agree with it or disagree with it. That's why we're here.
It would not be the first time we have suggested something to them they didn't like.
They need to give us metrics, right? What is it they want to achieve over what period of time, and what are the metrics we measure success by?
So I'm going to go back to
given no metrics.
I think a joint meeting would be best to start with, and then splinter off any subcommittees after that. But again, I go back to we're an advisory body, right? But we're the conscience of the county.
That's
I think the conscience clearly spoke this evening, and where we're at ain't working.
So I would like to see maybe something that they would be willing to put in writing to us first and then a joint meeting to
Agree.
discuss it.
So we'll have a situational awareness going
I mean,
in.
again, they have to give us the parameters, right? If they're worried about overcrowded schools, well, how many head count can they? If they're worried about so many new developments coming, well, how many over what period of time? I mean, give us some metrics to measure success or failure by. They haven't done that.
Yeah, even something like a goal for what is the growth rate that they would like to see in the county? Is it 0? Is it
That's
2?
where
Is
I'm
it
coming
5? What is the growth rate that we should be?
So is there any suggestions as to what we would like to see in that, right? You say come up with something. So what would we want to put in?
Simply, at this point, I don't see any action that we're obliged to do other than indicate our willingness to support the Board of Supervisors in their initiative with supplying more information or receiving more information, forming a working group, doing a joint meeting.
They asked us to review it, correct? So they didn't come in and say, hey, approve this. So I would like to see us request to the board an explanation of the lot. Somebody could correct me on the language here, but an explanation as to, or to identify the problem that they're trying to solve with their proposed changes. And following that, a discussion with them as a joint meeting.
At the end of the day,
Not the middleman of the subcommittee. So now, if after that joint meeting, we're still,
It could be as simple as saying, hey, look, we've had somebody reference about a 2% growth rate in the county. What percent of growth rate are you saying that you'd like it to be? How do we bend the curve or whatever? They have given us no
we can
parameters.
speculate all day, but until we understand what's driving this recommendation from them, I don't even know how to address it. So
that's the root issue, is we do not know what the ultimate objective is. So until that is communicated, we can't do
they've
anything.
given us a solution. I still don't know what the problem is. So that's
That would be the idea of a
We just have-
subcommittee.
I mean, I don't.
We could meet more frequently than what we're
So
doing now.
so it sounds like the question is to the board of supervisors, what is it that I guess that we're what is our mission here essentially?
I understand. Yep. We'll take it back as staff, give a report to them. I think they have a very good idea of what y'all said tonight. I know 2 of them were here, 1 of them's on the phone. So
Very well.
yeah, we'll go from here.
Thank you.
so. Can we go back?
Unanimous in their support for this. Is there any? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious. I mean, is the whole board of supervisors kind of pushing this, or are there different views?
In the previous minutes,
That's the only thing I'm comfortable saying is that it was a 5-0 vote. There wasn't much discussion about it.
All right. I think they have the message. I think we spent enough time. Let's move
correct,
on.
correct. All right. Which brings us to new business.
Hard way. Mr. Chairman,
Hang on,
can I
Mr.
ask
Chairman. Sure.
staff just one more question. On the data center, we drug ourselves through a knothole on the last application for a data center, only to have it go to the board and whatever they did, but it's still sitting out there unresolved. Can you give us at the next meeting some explanation of just what the true revenue will be off of this proposed data center? Because last time we found out that there was some kind of a
Yeah. Yeah. That was a lot of
Very disappointing.
smoke and mirrors on that. And if I may to add on to Mr. Kendrick's comment, I'd like to know where that thing is. Like, we don't know what the status of it is currently.
So I was saying, can you give us some kind of a little better feel for what the real revenue is off of this proposal? Because the last time we walked through this exercise, we were all running with this big, huge number, only to find out that there's some state law or something that the governor did that gives a lot of that money back to the company. So, yeah, are we looking at that? I mean, I don't want to go down that path again to thinking that we've resolved the revenue issue for the county only to find out, no, we haven't. And the value of this thing, I'm not denying the county needs to find a good, solid, long-term revenue source, but we thought we had it half a year ago and we did. So I'd sort of like to get a better feel. And I'll just tell you that we worked hard on that last data center, and it was spread out over a lot of land. We got good visual, you know, um, efforts on it so that it's not an eyesore. We did the sound. We got a lot of things resolved. We're not having that conversation with this guy, so I don't even, until I really see his proffers, I don't really know what he's proffering. But I really am concerned that it's a whole lot of buildings shoved onto a very tiny site and right along Route 3. And we were concerned about that last time, but this time we, I feel like we're rushing through this one.
Well, and I think we made a very measured decision on that. And I think that the previous board just ignored it because there were going to be dump trucks full of money showing up, right? Not one of those dump trucks has shown up yet.
Let's be clear. The staff, correct me if I'm wrong, that staff does the financial impact analysis for projects of its size at least, and probably more.
Well, typically an FIA fiscal impact analysis is submitted by the applicant. So staff we do not create the fiscal impact analysis.
Does our finance department review and comment?
So I cannot speak to what was done prior to June 1, prior to my arrival. I do not know how they were reviewed. In my past life at other localities, it's the economic development director, it's the finance director, and and there's a multitude of people who review the numbers. But I cannot speak prior to June 1 of 24.
Right.
With the county attorney,
this project or any other applicant on this threshold would have a staff produced document based on input from the applicant, based on the
I don't think it wouldn't be a staff produced document. It would be a comment produced by the applicant, commented on by staff, and possibly revised by the applicant, presented to a planning commission and board of supervisors.
Well, we had Davenport at that public meeting give numbers that were based on a different project, different set of assumptions, a different set of reality. It was clearly not informative. It was misinformative.
could I ask you just
That was very disappointing.
do we have a good view? Did you have a good understanding of the legal framework around these so-called rebate? I mean, for lack of a better term, rebates or what have you. Do we have the legal understanding of what's available to them and so on?
So these are good questions, and what we can do is we can get back, and I'll be at the next planning commission meeting. If memory serves me, the Amazon project was dubbed Project Tricycle through the Commonwealth of Virginia, and there was a tax abatement. I don't know all the details about that, but to the best of my knowledge, both of that. Well, there's two applications right now that we're reviewing right now. They have not requested nor have we discussed any sort of tax abatement to date in my review over the last 7 months of the green energy project, where there's another one, Dahlgren West. That's what we've reviewed in my time in 7 months. If for specific details on this, I can get. I think Mr. Kendrick. I think you were asking about. You want to see what the real numbers are. So there are going to be projections. Obviously, everything is a projection, but we will have some numbers for the Planning Commission to kind of evaluate the project that was considered a year and a half ago, and then the two current projects, one before you and one in the very near future.
I think specifically the thing that we need to make sure that we're not caught off guard was with the Amazon project. There was a state thing that was enacted by Governor Youngkin about a 2-for-1. I believe it was for the cost of infrastructure. That if Amazon put money, or if an industry put money into an infrastructure, the county had to pay $2 for every $1 they put in for that. I don't remember the exact terminology of the law, but it was something that was enacted at the state level that caught a lot of people off guard about
We need to know
the revenue that was coming in.
And we just need to see basically the net, I mean, how these things are structured and the abatements on the Rappahannock.
It's a two-part exercise, right?
Right.
One part is their own calculations. That's easy enough to sort of do the math on. But the other is, how is that going to be filtered by the law that they may be able to apply to themselves as it currently exists? I think we're sort of flying blind on that aspect to some extent.
As I understand it, some of this may have been cash upfront in advance of revenues for build out.
I think we just don't know, right? We need
All right.
We need some clear financial impact. And
Okay. I think
standard financial impact on that.
Yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing at this point. So, with that being said, you're going to get back with us. You're going to inform us in the best way that you can, and so stand by. And that's all I can say at this point. All right. Are there any more comments at this juncture? If not, we're going to go move on with new business. Our county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Matthew Smolnik, your county administrator. So I'm here for the initial presentation of the FY26 CIP presentation. I chatted with a few of you prior to the meeting, so I have changed some things up administratively here at the county. You're going to see me making the presentation on behalf. I do have some staff members here. Some others are on standby should you have any questions. But this is the way I've seen it done, and I want to make sure that, again, I answer the questions of the planning commission. I represent my staff well, and above anything, it's transparency for the public. All this information is online right now for the public to view, and then they can come in at any time to look at it. So I'm going to roll right through here. And next slide, please. So I did want to thank Sheriff Giles and his team. I had a presentation made, and then he added some few things. So you'll see a little bit different here with the beginning part of the presentation. And we're going to. You had up the first slide.
They present them to us once a year.
Miss-
I think we're ready.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
So for the FY 25-26 the CIP, I had $13,525,698 of request. For the total 5-year CIP, I believe it was pushing $69 million. So I'm just going to focus on the 25-26. So this would be the next fiscal year that we're looking at. So first of all, like I said, Sheriff's going to be a little bit different with his presentation. He provided me some additional information. I felt obliged to include it in this. So next slide, please. First one for Sheriff is a metal storage facility. This is project number 1. Next slide. So this is, if you're familiar with the sheriff's building, if you drive down there's some other, the next, you can just go to the next slide. We don't need all. So this is what you see. This was January 6th of this year. A lot of equipment sitting out there in the weather. So we've got equipment that is weathering, and you'll see the command center in the bottom center there. That's been out in the weather for quite some time. The decals on the other side are all peeling off, and really a state of readiness. If sheriff needed to get into some of this equipment on the fly, it's just not going to happen. And if he's got 4-wheelers stacked in a garage that are behind generators, chainsaws, and all that, it's just not going to. Time is of the essence when it comes to an emergency. So we believe with a larger bay, he'll be able to be on the ready for the citizens of King George and to protect some of this very valuable equipment that he has. So next slide. And this is the approximate location on Government Center Boulevard, kind of behind the rear parking lot. Next slide. Project number 2, the mobile command unit. Go ahead, please. A 32-year-old unit shared with Sheriff's Office and King George Fire Rescue. Yeah, 32 years. I'm looking at some of the faces. So it is very outdated. The wiring shot. There's a lot that needs to be replaced with this, and it would double as a backup communication centers and a regional resource in this area. And this is just a layout of what the inside of this mobile command unit would look like. Essentially they could operate right out of it. You're fine. Go ahead. Next patrol vehicles. You can go ahead. Next slide. There's actually 5 patrol vehicles being requested, 1 van. Sometimes there are issues with transport. The bus, the van that brings inmates here are full. Bail that may get revoked. Well, now we have to run 2 or 3 inmates back to the jail. You can only put so many in a car. A van would, could accommodate and alleviate some of this the strain that our department has currently. And there's 2 new patrol cars should the positions be funded in the operating budget. So number 4, the E911 communication consoles. Keep on going here. So built in 2011, starting to fail. We've got some next slides here showing the cramped quarters here with the communication center. Really, you have emergencies going on and you've got somebody in your left or right ear trying to talk to somebody also. It can be very confusing. They do a great job. The proposed project will allow for expansion of the communication center and also to allow a supervisor to be in the room. These are some of the layouts, the proposed layouts. Next, you can keep on going. And next, the last slide for Sheriff is the replacement of the mobile data terminals. So there are 36 of them right now. All the warranties are up. So we were recommending that they all be replaced at the same time. You buy in bulk, you're going to get a better price, newer technology, newer updates. So this is a request of the sheriff. Next slide. And this is what you'll see really for the remaining projects, kind of a summary. Project title, priority, a description, and then the 25-26 cost. So these are the projects that I just discussed with the sheriff's office for his request. Next slide. We're going to go on to fire rescue. We talked about the aerial ladder truck, $2.7 million. This is a request of Chief Moody for the next fiscal year, as is the ambulance replacement. So the ambulances that we have, there are 7 total. There's some replacements that we have, and it's a rotating cycle. It's important to keep these, to stay on this cycle so we don't have to do 3 or 4 in one particular year. And the lead time on, if you know anything about ambulances, fire trucks, you're looking several years. I think a fire truck, the ladder truck, I said 3 or 4-year lead time on that. So it's quite some time. We want to make sure we stay on the schedule for the ambulance replacement. Next slide. And also requested Chief Moody's a tanker overhaul for tanker number 1, trying to extend the life of that and save some money over purchasing a new one. So he does have other requests. They are in the packet. They're not for this next fiscal year though. But I want to, you'll see if there's a dash there, it's just nothing is being requested for 25, 26. It's in the 5-year plan. Next slide. General properties, 3 projects, all in the next fiscal year. The YQ locks, if you've been watching the Board of Supervisor meetings with the new courthouse that will be open soon, the key card locks with a badge. They were not installed as part of the construction of this. This project number 1 would go back through and put the YQ locks into the building. They are in some of them, and this was it was discussed at great lengths at the Board of Supervisor meeting between all parties. They weren't on the plans, so. That's first project, modern fold door over at the library. This is a folding door. Talking to the librarian, I believe it was installed upside down. There's a lot of maintenance issues with it. All the weight is at the bottom of the folding door, where it should be at the top. They've been limping it along. There are some repairs that have been consistently need to be made to that. Mike Muncie is requesting just to fix that, $80,000 for a door, and then replace the asphalt shingles on Company 1 for $297,000. Next slide. IT, pretty standard computer replacement, 5 years. Once 5 years is up, your warranties are up. So that's standard practice here at King George and any locality I've worked at for 5-year computer replacement, and then a couple server replacements, 2 servers, county finance and the EOC for preventing the loss of data. So those are the 2 IT requests. Parks and Rec, they've got a number of them. The first in this next fiscal year, $100,000 to expand Wayside Park, right there at the foot of the bridge. Irrigation at Sealston Complex, pretty self-explanatory, and flush bathrooms at Sedell Brooks Park. It's the only park without flush restrooms. A dog park, I believe this has been on previously. This is back on. Mr. Clark's 25-26 CIP, a playground at Sealston Sports Complex. So as activities are going on, youth who are not participating, maybe in a soccer game, can be entertained on the playground. Citizen Center renovation. I believe the last time that was renovated, I believe there was a fire there. This would add some new door security cameras, carpeting, ADA ramps, and some parking lot upgrades. Next slide. And then multimodal pathways. So there was a grant that was received. Chris, what was the name of the TAP, the transportation TAP, correct? The TAP, that does require a matching fund. We did get a phase that was discussed at the board over the last couple months for some sidewalks near the Sheets intersection, some improvements to that intersection itself. However, there are matching funds needed, and we put those in the CIP should we be awarded a grant. So that's the $250. And then moving down, Citizen Center LED message board. This may be something similar to what we have at Station 1 next door. So for specific messages, and I know the library, I talked to them about their new message board and how we can program that for county activities also. So this is a request to put one at the Citizen Center, and then demolition of the old animal pound. This is up on the field when you go into Sedell Brook Park up on the right-hand side. All right, next slide. Registrar, talking to Ms. Gump, there are new requirements that will require by 2025 a new standard for voting machines. So this would be a necessary 15 new voting machines and touch writers. According to Ms. Gump, they want to stay ahead of the curve. We don't want this to be last minute. You shall do this before the next election. So she's requested almost $87,000 for new voting machines and voting equipment that will become standard at all polling locations across the country. Solid waste and recycling, a roll-off truck. Currently, the truck that Mr. Newchuk and his team are using, it won't pass an inspection right now. It is utilized very heavily. It is old, and they're trying to piecemeal this together the best that they can. We had a major brake repair on it recently, so $255 for a new roll-off truck and some 30-yard open-top roll-off boxes, a little over $24,000 at the King George Convenience Centers. And then schools, this is the last group. SBO, School Board Office. Over here, you'll notice a lot. If you took a tour of the old school, whenever we held tours, you may have wandered over to the school board office. If you have not seen this building, it may be worth a trip over there. The SBO, you'll see numerous items on the CIP requested by Dr. Boyd. A roof replacement, an 87 roof it's leaking. Single pane windows from the 60s. Replaced a fire alarm that is completely obsolete, and a sewer pump that does not meet VDH and EPA standards. So these are the first list, and we can go on the next slide. You'll see more school board.
May I ask a
Question?
question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, with the school board, we've been after them the last several years to give us a plan for what they're trying to do with all their buildings.
Okay.
And just so that we could understand sort of a priority of what needs to go first. They any closer to having them?
I had a meeting with Dr. Boyd this morning. I will rendezvous with him once again to see, where this plan is that the planning commission requested, and kind of a facilities update. And in addition to the school board office, the number 7 here, the VOTEC feasibility study. So there's a structure between the I guess it's the old VOTEC school, between the high school and the middle school right now. They're currently using that as storage. Now, number 7 is of interest, as an economic development guy, creating that career and technical program. We had a dinner with the CTE, about 30 people there. That is a building that we have had discussions about. The cumulative approach. I do not have that, sir, but I will work with the schools, and I will, if you'd like Mr. or Dr. Boyd to come back, or I can present it. But if you've requested it, I will
We
get
can
that
just
for you.
see it. I don't want to trouble him necessarily, but
Okay.
we've been after him for several years to give us that comprehensive look
Okay.
so that we know where they're trying to go. And every year we get, oh, this is important, that's important. And next year it seems to be a different mix of what's really important.
Okay.
And we
Yeah.
we haven't made a lot of progress because we can't understand what they're trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and to pile on Mr. Kennedy's comment there is, we're looking for the long-term strategy where they're going, right? You go back and you go, oh, they want $1 million to replace a bunch of windows in a really old building that maybe
that's
2
right.
years from now we're going to bulldoze over.
That's right.
But we don't know what that long-term plan is, so that we know whether or not we need to patch the roof, replace windows, or it's all going to be demolished and we should just build a new building.
Understood. Yes, sir.
We're looking for that long-term plan.
Okay.
We're crossing about a half a century past its useful life, maybe somewhere in there, and to throw money at it. I mean, that building is. We need to look for other options.
There may be a better, a smarter way to spend the money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's prime real estate.
Same thing goes for the old middle school.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's sitting abandoned as far as I know.
In the old middle school, we're working on that RFP. We had a lot of ARPA projects to get behind us, but that I think it was $600,000 was approved with the last year's CIP ultimately by the board in the fall to demo that building.
So that comprehensive sort of look at all of their structures would help me for sure.
And if
There was a while back, there was some really good stuff drawn up on using all that property that's together for multiple schools and doing more there. I don't know whatever happened to that. I don't know if it's being worked or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All good points. Thank you.
So as you can see, we're all having a little bit of deja vu all over again.
Yeah, the school board office just comes up every year. We've seen the picture of that sewage pump for a long time. Like,
But I do have a question about the Vortec building. So what exactly will the study, or what answers are you looking for from the study that will be done?
So the VOTEC study here. This is probably about 3 weeks old across my desk. So, but talking with Terry Rinko, who runs the CTE program, really looking to bolster that program. And coming from an area with a very solid career and technical education center, the study, and I'm going to bring this to my EDA at their meeting next month to consider is to how do we best utilize this space? Can you get, is there space for welding booths?
Right.
Is there, can we reuse some of the space for an electrician program?
Yeah.
For plumbing?
So to bring King George into what the workforce is heading. And that is all the trades, plumbing, electricity, welding, all of that. All the surrounding counties are already on board. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Real. we'll be
Any other question? I know I've been going fast. Any other questions at this point?
keep moving.
The only other comment that I would make is we last year also asked about trying to get a county-wide comprehensive understanding of storage requirements. We see individual departments coming in for, I want a storage shed. Maybe we'd be better off to build one centralized and partition it out, or make it so that it is partitionable, as needs for different departments ebb and flow. So
That's something
that's
I'm looking,
another one I would put
and
on
you'll see
you
the
as a
top one there, the storage facility, 1.5 million. So one thing that I'm looking at, and I'm going through my operating budget, identifying what county departments are paying for storage units.
Exactly.
Right.
And understand a county-wide storage
that's
needs,
correct.
not just a school board.
That's correct. We want to look at it from the 50,000 foot view. Yes, sir. So
The amounts, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. One of the things, I'm not sure if you just haven't gotten to it yet, but last year we discussed what the old courthouse building was going to be used for. And as we talk about storage and those needs, was that on this year's
Well, I
plan?
believe the feasibility study was part, I have to go back and look, but I'm quite certain that was part of the approved CIP that the board approved. It was later this year, a couple months after I got here, so I want to say August. But I will double check and I'll get back to you.
So it hasn't been executed, it was just approved?
It was approved. So over the last couple of months, we have been working tirelessly to ensure that $21 million of ARPA grants did not go away. They almost went away. We need to make sure we got those 10 projects out to bid, worked on that. My engineering, I've got an engineering team of one now, two, to work on things for the service authority, who's without a general manager right now. So I believe that has been approved. We have not acted on it yet. Like I said, we've been focusing on these ARPA funds that if we didn't have them by December 31, they would have gone away. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The numbers on there, are those just estimates from the staff? And
That's
then we
correct.
go to bid and get a real price?
That is correct. Yes, sir. All right. Middle school catwalk. There was an analysis done here to access the HVAC units. You can't get to them with their lift. So they recommended a catwalk to access some of these units. We've got Potomac Elementary parking lots, just some work out there with the asphalt. Next slide. These are school board necessary. We're going from an urgent to a necessary category. 650 with a school bus refresh. Again, similar to the patrol vehicles. They have to be cycled out. You want to stay on that cycle so you don't have to purchase 15 buses at one time. There's a lead time on them. The price just gets more expensive each year. Some flooring replacement requesting in all the King George schools. 145,000. King George Middle School overlay. Prevent some leakage and add some insulation for $700,000. The other projects there, nothing recommended for 25, 26. And then we've got two items here: King George High School, King George Middle School weapon detection for points of entry. Requested 575 at the high school, 250 at the middle school. Next slide. Nothing for future for this particular year. But this is kind of where the school board is thinking, where the school itself, and then maybe one more slide, I think, and that's it. So, and I've had some discussions with the planning commission prior to this meeting, and I want to hear from you all. So I think this is the first time where the county administrator came up, ran through all the projects, trying to make more use of better use of my time, of your time, and of staff's time. So the next steps would be a public hearing. And the planning commission ranks the projects. I came in, I inherited a sheet with all your rankings on it. So maybe you could help me out. How and when is the ranking done? Is it after public comment is received during the public hearing, prior to? How did you all do it last year, and how would you like to proceed this year?
Usually we get a sheet with all the projects, which
Okay.
you saw the old ones, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
And they had the departments come up and present.
Yeah, and I
You're
think that,
presenting.
you should have received this.
Yeah, it's usually a big
We'll,
one.
we'll do a bigger sheet.
But-
Yes, sir.
So anyway, then we would just rank them and turn them back in.
Okay. Before, after the public hearing, after public comment's been received, or I'm just
Think
looking
we
for a
have
timing.
Had a
We
public hearing.
never had a sponsored public hearing on the CIP, that we didn't
That's right.
get community input.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
We had long discussions amongst the planning commission, but we never,
Never.
I do not remember having public hearing about our recommendations.
Oh,
At a meeting, but
we-
not a public hearing.
that was a public hearing.
It was a public hearing when when the department heads came in and presented
Right.
their
Yeah.
recommendations to us. We got them in advance,
Okay.
a couple of weeks, if not a month in advance, what you're providing us now. They had a multi-page sheet they filled out.
They're in our package.
They're in your packet.
Okay, all
They're
right.
in the
Yes,
package.
they are in the packet.
And
150
then
pages.
Thank you.
they presented, we asked questions. After the meeting, we were given 10 days or so to score them and turn them back in. At the following meeting, then, 1 month after they presented them to us, we went over the scores, and staff had collected all the numbers by then and averaged them. And then we were given one shot to take one more sort of massage of the numbers, if people had real strong disagreements. And that was it.
Okay. So timing wise, so I'm here a couple more months.
Yeah, Matt.
March.
2+ months.
You want to help? Yeah. So Mr. Kendricks labeled it correctly in the 6 years I've been here. Now it's varied on the time of year based on who the administrator was, but in the past, the public hearing and the staff presentation has been together as one presentation. Then they go away for 10 days, score it, and then at the following meeting, they would do, as Mr. Kendrick says, kind of confirm the ratings, and allow them to make adjustments if there was something that they could come to a consensus maybe was deemed to be urgent. So yeah, it has taken 2 months in the past.
So we're looking March before I hear back from, if you hold the public hearing in February, let you all get the comments back. It doesn't come back to you as we meet in March.
March, they would come back with the averages and we would confirm the averages.
When
Say,
do
well,
you want
that's too low or that's a little high.
Right.
So it sounds like
It sounds like he's.
it sounds like you think that's too long.
The board has directed me to try to have a budget, an operating budget by the end of April. Some of these requests are tied to an operating budget, such as the 2 patrol cars. I need to kind of know what that operating budget looks like, because there are some correlations, not a lot of, but there are correlations between both budgets. That's the goal that was set to me by the Board of Supervisors by the end of April.
I'm going to just throw this out there. I want to question the value add of the Planning Commission's contribution to this process. General awareness. We have a very competent staff, and as part of this process, the staff has a categorization: urgent, necessary, nice to have, good to have. But from our perspective, we need to know how these things impact our community carrying capacity. If the firehouse isn't built, can we have a settlement area? If the EMS system isn't robust enough to support a subdivision, or, those are land use matters, and economic development, I would argue, is somewhat within our purview, but arguing whether the catwalk in the middle school is more important than the windows in the King George admin office, it's like less meaningful. I never participated in the ranking because I really I didn't have the information the staff has that you have about the impact, but I did want to know if our public safety needs are being addressed in a relevant way, and that the school capacity is sufficient to support the housing building.
So the information that staff has is the same information that you all have in your packet. Just I want the public to know that's the information that we have.
Okay.
We've had meetings with each individual department to kind of go over these and understand them a little bit better, which led me to my summary tonight, my presentation. But I just want to be clear that the information there's really no additional information out. It's all out there.
I'm not saying but the nuance and the interrelationship and the the internal discussions that you may have had about competing requirements, because naturally it's between competing demands. They're all neat, useful, good things to do. That's not a question. But what are the priorities, and how does that support the comprehensive plan in terms of where we have the settlement areas? Are we getting enough water into our systems? Questions that affect development, quality of life, and I think Parks and Rec is of critical interest to us. Economic development, quality of life, land use question. I know we have another committee out there on our public buildings, county-owned buildings, and are we duplicative? Do they go through this?
No, sir.
Just
So we don't make the final decisions.
Correct.
We know that. We're just we're like a sanity check. And rather than having the decision in one or two people's hands, you know, and the people who used to present them, you're presenting them now. So I assume you're not overly biased about a particular project. That's your pet project. But we listened to the different departments, and there were obviously pet projects in them. Okay. And 95% of what they pitched to us had value. It was just a question of how much
Which one has the most value?
And so you got our 10 opinions on what we thought. Once we made the recommendation between your position and the Board of Supervisors and staff, you guys put the budget together and did money. We never got into the money part of it per se. So it was just simply an independent body offering a recommendation on what they thought was important.
So
the dog park.
Yeah.
I've looked at that one for 10 years now.
Yeah.
It's like, and I keep asking the question, how many people really want one?
And the reason that the CIP, we went from, I think, 50 projects to 70 projects. I challenged my staff to say, I want to see a beefed up CIP this year. And the reason that's important is whenever a rezoning comes in, the laws have changed, when I started 21 years ago. That's right. You can't proffer unless it's in the CIP. You can't ask for a proffer. So, we just made that menu board that much bigger for the developers to see the needs of the community.
Oh yeah, we love a wish list.
That's right.
But then we sort of tell you what should be on the wish list and what's really real that needs to be done in the next year or two. That's all we offered up. We weren't producing a budget.
No. I think it was just a number of rankings, 1 through 10 or whatever. I forget what it was.
And the budget and what the county actually spent money on sometimes didn't resemble our recommendations very well. But you guys put a whole different perspective on it and did what you thought was important from your perspective. All you got was ours.
Yeah.
I think it's a worthwhile process for the board to go through.
Yeah.
But
and that's where I'm going with this is if you're in agreement that our input is vital. That it is. And it sounds like you're under a bit of a timeline, if you will. My thought process is it possible, or would we be willing to have a public hearing and then have a special session with us so that we can fit your timeline?
I'd be amenable so long as this commission was okay with that.
Right. And so I'm open.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd say from my personal experience going through this last time, I hate to be blunt, but I would say most of the information is in the detailed sheets.
Yeah.
We've got over 150 pages worth of details about these projects. I personally would be okay with us taking and getting a score sheet that we need to fill out and have us go through that score sheet based on this information. And we have one session for us to lobby, normalize, whatever term you want to use, the 10 opinions and the scoring of the people here. We can get that done next month. I would take this offline as a homework assignment with a scoring sheet that we can get. We had one from last year.
We can get that.
And we'll take it as homework project. We'll get it back to you guys before next month's meeting, and we can discuss the normalizing of the scores and get you a recommendation. I agree. There's not a whole lot of value for us
Correct.
expending a tremendous amount of energy debating and discussing these things.
Particularly because the numbers are yours, right? We don't evaluate the numbers per se.
Yeah.
Just the priorities.
Yeah, it's not like we come back and go, well, we really think that number should be 90,000 instead of 80,000.
We don't do that.
Right.
You own the numbers.
It's a prioritization, really, and your number is your number. So
I mean, if
that's
you're
that's
really
just my recommendation.
from a time constraint from the board, we're more than happy to work with you to abbreviate it this year.
Yeah, I think that's a, if the PC's okay with that, we can get the scoring sheets out to you all electronically within the next day or two. Well, I'll say by week's end. All the information that I have, you have. Go through that and provide your rankings and get those back to staff. I'm going to say if you get them 3 days prior to the next planning commission meeting, that gives you 25 days to look at these and rank 70 projects.
Wouldn't we need to rank them after the departments speak as to?
But I think that's the point. All the information that's going to come out of the mouths of the department heads is already on the sheet of paper that you already have. There's a lot of information.
There's a lot of information in the sheets that's buried in here. They give rationale. Many times the EMS and the sheriff has given us even mileage of the vehicles that they're wanting to replace and how many miles are put in per year. There's a tremendous amount of information.
And that sure would keep us on track. It just puts a little homework for the planning commission members. I feel like a teacher in school. If that's okay with you, we will get those out and.
Will the staff have scored them when we see them?
So staff does not score them.
Never did.
They average them.
They average them. Right. We're going to take your scores and average it.
They've already scored them in a terminology phase. It's urgent, it's needed, it's necessary, whatever their term is. And then we in the scoring sheet they gave us a score. It was like 1 to 3 is urgent and 4 to 5 is
correct
is another term and 6.
And we'll just take those numbers and average them.
I make a motion that we have the public hearing for this at the next meeting for FY 2026-2030 CIP, and let's move this meeting along.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Sorry. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next on
what process are we going to use, Chris?
I just want to move this along, man.
Or are we going to do the process that I suggested, or are we going to have them come in with department? You said we're going to have a public meeting. What is the content, and what do we expect to have ready for that public hearing?
And the messaging.
I think the expectation is we have our votes ready 3 days prior to the meeting. Is that what I heard, Mr. Multi?
That's our homework.
Just wanted to make sure we were.
So do we have to make a motion to have a public hearing next month?
We just did.
Yeah.
Seconded
and voted and passed. All right. Okay.
We have
it's because it's due process. Okay, it's due process. Okay. All right. Is there anyone here to talk about the solar special project exception? There he is. All right. So next is application Z 2024000219. Davis Hill. Excuse me, Davis Hill Daisy Lane Solar Special Exception for Solar Energy, medium scale facility. Take it away, sir.
Good evening. My name is Will Thurman with Davis Hill Development. I know it's been a long meeting here, so I'll try and be concise and efficient, but please stop me if you have any questions along the way. Yes, it's the Daisy Lane Solar project. It's at 8209 Daisy Lane, King George, Virginia. Our company is Davis Hill Development. You can go to the next slide. So we're a developer, owner, operator of community solar and commercial industrial solar projects. Essentially, that's just meaning that, we own and operate our projects for long term. There's other groups out there that permit and sell off the projects. With us, we, like I said, long-term owner operator. You're going to be dealing with us through the permitting process and through the life cycle of the project. This is just a quick snapshot of our parent company, Skyview Ventures. They have a EV charging company as well called Sky Charger. In the middle, there's Davis Hill Development. It started in 2013. And primarily, like I said, community solar and commercial and industrial solar projects. So we also do rooftop, things of that nature. We currently own and operate 100 plus megawatts projects across 15 states. We also have a pipeline of 250 megawatts. So all that to say, we're stable, we're efficient, we've been in the market for a while, and can handle the process. I'll go through this quick. It sounds like you guys are familiar with solar and understand what these groups have, but we have community and utility scale origination and development, basically just meaning we have the in-house staff that reaches out to landowners and different groups, and then we have a development team that comes in and permits the projects and takes them to the next stage. We have our own GIS system, interconnection and electric infrastructure. Obviously, we're dealing with the utility very often. That's a big part of this job. So we're in conversation with Dominion right now on this project in specifics. I'll skip over the rest here, but obviously we've successfully developed 30 projects, and that totaled that 150 megawatt number I said earlier. So this is just a quick snapshot of kind of the markets we work in. Clearly, you can see we're primarily a mid-Atlantic and northeastern focus in our markets. Virginia is a great market for us, and we're excited to work with you all. Next slide, please. Just a quick snapshot of a few of our projects, just so you can see, as opposed to the earlier solar project you saw, we're a much smaller community solar, so up to 5 megawatts. This project in particular is 2.7 megawatts, so relatively small on a larger scale, but still provides enough power to move the needle. Community solar, this is just a very high level snapshot. Essentially, you have a subscription, you have a community solar project that we build. That project produces the power, goes back to the grid, the utility creates bill credits off that, and those people that subscribe through our subscription would get bill credits on their utility bill, which is roughly 10 to 15% discounted bill rate on your everyday power bill. So proposed projects, these are just kind of high level details. As I mentioned, the address 8209 Daisy Lane, 2.7 megawatts AC, just roughly, sorry about that, around 12 acres. So like I said, pretty minimal compared to the others we've heard about today. Module count, 6,448. Just like to show that for scale. And this project will participate in the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreational Pollinator Smart Program. So essentially, it's just saying we, all the grounds underneath, we seed with local seed mix and pollinator species. And as I mentioned previously, community solar, this is just an average. Depends on the utility rate. We would hope to be kind of above that 15% range, but provides 10 to 15% discounted clean energy on your local utility rates. This project in particular will generate enough electricity to power 679 homes in a year. And then 30% of that community solar subscriber base is dedicated to low to moderate income households. So essentially, we're just carving off 30% of that overall subscriber base to make sure those who need the reduced power bill can actually get to that. And then,
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep, sorry about that.
Instead of letting you formally go through the whole thing, I'll just get it out now. How does this subscription, is it limited to people in King George County that would be able to subscribe? Or can someone from California subscribe to the energy from this plant in King George?
You need to be in Virginia, in the area. No,
But it can be somebody from Northern Virginia that's subscribing and getting a reduced power because we put in a solar
Do you
plant.
offer first at least to King George kind of?
Yes, 100%. So it's basically the outreach is all driven by us. So you can't, someone couldn't come subscribe unless they spoke to us first. Obviously, the residents come first. I'll get back to you on a specific number. There's definitely a radius. I just don't know off the top of my head what the Virginia Dominion radius is. So I'll
Okay.
check in on that.
Thank you.
But it's not, you can't go from, people in Charlottesville are not going to be subscribing to this.
Yeah.
Any other questions while I'm going? I know I'm moving fast. I apologize.
Quick, how does this subscription model work? Do we pay you and then?
No, so it's all through the utility. So you sign up with us, as in like you would sign up to our subscription platform. There's no money associated with that, but then you get the bill credits. The utility sends the bill credits, then you get the bill credits off that subscription. If that makes sense. So right here, this is just a concept plan. Obviously, it's a little hard for you all to see from this distance, but Kelly has all this in our formal application and project narrative, so feel free to take a deeper look. Before we run into this, I'll just kind of say a couple reasons why we like the project, why we think it's a good fit for this location and for King George County. One, it's it's well sited and designed to conform to the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. A big factor here is very minimal visual impacts. That's our kind of number one complaint that we see in the solar industry is, I'm okay with it, but I don't want to see it. The good thing about this project is it's almost 100% naturally screened by existing forest around the property. So we wouldn't be cutting any of that down. The project is essentially going in the middle of a older hayfield that is surrounded by forest and basically screens from all abutters. Correct. Yep. And then the other point would just be the minimal environmental impact. We're having no impact to wetlands here, no mature tree clearing, and we're utilizing kind of a neglected older hayfield that has been somewhat overgrown at this point. So we would be, revegetating that, clearing, and the soil underneath would end up being in probably a better spot than it is now with any invasive species and whatnot. These are the special exception proposed conditions that we proposed. Kelly, I believe you have these as well. I'm happy to go through them. I don't want to take everybody's time as there are pretty, I don't know, proposed conditions that address the consideration of the community, environment, regulatory requirements. So essentially, we're checking a lot of boxes that are asked of us, but kind of going above and beyond of stating them now and saying, hey, for example, minimize erosion, soil disturbance during construction. That will all be, matured in our SWIP. That will be reviewed by a licensed engineer, but things like limiting construction between 7 to 6:30 p.m. Yeah, like I said, I just don't think it's worth the board's time to run through these right now.
Sorry, go ahead. Do you have a diagram of where the transmission line route would run to interconnect your project?
We do on that previous slide. So it's hard to tell from here, but essentially at the bottom of the array there, Daisy Lane goes up, and then the POI, so we're essentially tapping into the existing single phase and then upgrading that line down, what is it? So down Daisy Lane to Ernest Ellis Lane, and then where I might be pronouncing this wrong, Dahlgren Road crosses. We're tapping into that 3-phase, and then they're upgrading all the existing poles. There'll be no new poles.
Perhaps in your next generation of slide dues.
Yep, get you the full picture.
That'd be good. Thanks.
Yeah, my other question is sort of associated with that. If I looked at this correctly on the GIS, you're crossing, I believe the state right of way ends at is it Ernest Lane or Ernest something?
Ernest Ellis.
Ernest Ellis Road.
Correct. There's a 1 mile.
Daisy, yeah, what is Daisy Lane?
Yep. There's a 1 mile right of way there.
And that crosses 2 or 3 other people's properties. Do you have agreements with the other landowners between Ernest Ellis and your site?
Not
for
at this.
construction?
No, we don't have easements at this stage,
Okay.
but that would be needed,
Yeah,
obviously.
you're gonna need to get agreements because that's private property you're crossing in between you and the state road.
Yep.
The other one to consider that we've had from other people is agreements about damages to the state road. You would be responsible for fixing any potential damage to Ernest.
Gotcha.
You can take a look at some of the things from other agendas and topics to understand what I'm talking about. It has to do with, you're bringing in a lot of heavy equipment, installing this equipment. I don't know if that road, which was built by a developer, what's going to happen. You start bringing your trucks in and out of there.
We would do a facility study and make sure and we would upgrade the road if not prior, but understood. I'll look through that.
Yes. Correct. Yeah, but construction vehicles bringing all this in. I'm just saying in the Gibson, they specifically talked about how they were going to, and in the energy storage, they said, we're going to repair the highway.
Correct. Yep. But this is like way in the correct. Yep. So this is much further to the front of that property, but I know what you're talking about there. And just to clarify, the Gibson Solar, their construction and the amount of trucks and larger trucks that would be coming in compared to ours is vastly different. I understand. where
Maybe
you're
an
coming from.
easy thing for you to do, but to give the people that live in Fox Run some confidence that the road to their subdivision isn't going to be destroyed by your construction.
No, it's good.
We encourage communication with adjacent properties.
We already did send out letters to abutters. But obviously
continually.
Just wanted to let you know it has the first stage has occurred, but obviously there'll be continued communication.
More is better.
Yep, understood.
It'll also be helpful in your next generation to really zero in on the community solar scheme and how King George residents might personally benefit from that. Yeah.
I do like the idea of starting with a smaller solar plan than a bigger one.
I have a question.
12 acres sounds a lot better than.
I have a question about your pollinator planting. Are you committed to not using herbicide and pesticides?
Yes, and that's all part of the. I'm already forgetting the acronym, but the Virginia Coalition of. If can you go back one slide, please? Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation and Pollinator Smart Program. That is in their guidelines, but also it's not part of our plans.
So this is another request for public hearing. Is this application complete and ready to go?
For the most part, it is. It does meet all the requirements for the special exception. This is considered a medium scale
Right.
solar.
Mhm.
I think there's a few things tonight that we'll work on based on y'all's comments, but it could be ready for public hearing. Yes.
My understanding, there's no deforestation associated with this, correct? It's
Correct.
It's all field. Yeah, it's the way it should be. Okay. Well, I think. I know I think that's what we got down here is figure out the public hearing schedule for February. So. Yeah.
Just happy you guys let me do it.
Sorry, Will. Yeah.
No. I'm happy I got it done.
Right. So, so it sounds like we're maybe looking at March public hearing at the earliest. Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask: is this subject to the interconnect system or scheme, where you have to get in a queue to interconnect with Dominion, or is it low a threshold? Or
it's below threshold, but we still have to go through Dominion. But we already have an interconnection agreement with them, and we're
queuing.
Correct.
Presumably, you'll have a project schedule to show, and
how your manpower on site ramps up and ramps down and this kind of thing. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's just at this stage we don't have that advanced level.
You
Of
know,
detail.
is it correct that it would be unmanned once it's in operation? Unless,
Oh yeah,
other
yeah.
than just
There's
periodic
one.
service?
We usually have one maintenance truck that comes every month. Everything's remotely monitored as far as you know malfunctioning, but we usually have once or twice a month someone just comes by in a pickup truck, checks things out, but nobody's in there. Gates locked.
All right. So it sounds like we're ready for requests for public hearing. So, Mr. Myers.
I make a motion that we forward application Z 2024-00219, or we schedule it for a public hearing in
No earlier than March.
March.
Why March and not February is my question.
So we already have two other things. Is all I was.
That's up to y'all. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
you're in wrong. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that next, but I would recommend March. I don't want to do 3 public hearings in one meeting.
Is the applicant okay with that?
I think seeing how this went, we probably should push to March. That's fine with us.
Because you want, yeah,
Sounds good.
All right.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded. All in favor, say aye. All right, unanimous decision.
Opposed?
Any opposed? What? One opposed? Well, we have a majority. So with a hearing to be at the earliest of March. In the story. All right.
for
Move-
public hearing.
Public hearing, correct.
Not a-
I still don't think that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
All right.
It's much better.
Next on the agenda is staff reports, director's report. Do we have a director's report tonight?
Yes, there's 2 months worth of director's reports at the end of your packet. If you have any questions, give me a call. Let me know. Same old report.
Any highlights, any big projects, any
Nothing new from
Chick-
last month. No, we're trying to get
Buffalo Wild Wings coming in?
Lucy, we got any new
All right.
any new restaurants coming in?
Let's see.
No.
All right. Committee reports, none. Commission reports, none. Other future business.
So I would just request, and again, I don't mean to complain, but the last few meetings have been way too long. And I don't mind having information sessions, but one is plenty. I don't need to see the same applicant 3 times because we dropped anchor on that and the data center, which had been, that was their second time up. The solar farm, they sent everything over. We could have read it. I mean, I just don't want to come here at 7 and leave at 11. And I mean, that may sound like we're complaining, but we're basically volunteering for this. And I just don't want to stay here all night, every meeting. And unless am I wrong? Man, I think we could just tidy up the agenda.
Use your discretion. But I think an applicant, especially at the larger scale, gets one crack at the pinata and an info brief, test the waters and then use your discretion or consult with the chair. If a second one's warranted, fine, but
I guess my other
create that expectation where people can.
Yeah, my other concern about multiple visits is I feel like we're helping the applicant polish their apple. And I feel like in a way it could give them a false impression that we're going to approve it when they finally come in with a public hearing. Like, because I can tell you that, I, there's some things that I'm just not going to vote for. They can come here 15 times, but I don't want them to think that I am because I haven't asked questions about it. Right. So,
Applicant, nothing.
right. That's the other thing. If we start doing that for everybody and it gets really busy, we could have a dozen of these in an evening. I'm just saying, this is way too late. I'm tired. I've been working since 6:30. So
If it's decisional, it's got a priority. If it's informational, it go,
I would say this to the committee. Um, think about the questions that you're asking. Is it something that is going to legitimately help you in making a decision? I know we want to be informed, but we don't want to just talk to be talking. Talk with a point. Talk uh, with meaning, right? And I think that will also help the process as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, so what I'm hearing is just so I can help direct my staff, this commission is okay with staff using discretion, what appears on the agenda for presentations.
I would
That's
say,
what I just heard. I want that clear so that I know how to direct my staff during staff meetings.
My opinion is, if an applicant comes and they give their long spiel and we bring up some concerns and those concerns were answered in an email to us, it should not be presented again.
unless staff says, this is a shift, this is a significant shift, or
So that's my question. That's why I'm just looking for
I trust the
affirmation that
staff. I'll go
you,
with the
you,
staff.
you're putting your faith in
We'll-
staff to tell you.
I mean,
on the record.
and honestly, we do anyway.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Sounds good. I just want to make sure I was clear on that so I knew how to direct my staff. So thank you very
Well,
much.
I know you guys aren't new at this rodeo. You've done this a lot. And I think it's just a question of getting comfortable with us and our attitudes after several meetings. And then, yeah, I'm certainly fine with giving you the discretion to sort of push certain issues that you've heard us push with other ones. Like this was the third solar project. There's one more I see on the out agenda. So we're interested in how much forest they're cutting down, those kind of things, where the power lines running. You've heard those questions. So get them to provide answers to all that crap before it comes to us. And maybe it'll just be easier on all of us. So.
okay. All right. Yeah.
And these informational briefs are new to us. It wasn't our custom in the past. And I see a lot of value in them. But as Chris says, there's a limit of our time and resources to put to it.
And yours as well.
I was glad to see him today too. I got some good information, feel better about the project. But remember, we get questions from the public. Get phone calls, say, what is this about rezoning A2, stuff. So
And if they provide a slide package and give it to us to read, there really isn't a whole lot of value in questioning them then. It's almost, you know what I mean? We don't need multiple meetings with them.
Okay. So with that, brings us to the favorite part of the meeting. But before I do that, each member, if you have not filled this out, please do so. Set it in front of you so it can be collected by Ms. Kelly. Secondly, Mr. Parker, thank you so much for your leadership that you have given us over the years to the board. Thank you. I'll say this: I am one of one, as is Miss Denise, and it speaks of your character to put me in a position that I'm in, and I appreciate it, and I thank you tremendously from the bottom of my heart. So thank you.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Well, you are looking at eminently qualified.
Thank you. And with that, if I get a motion to adjourn,
I make a motion that we adjourn to February, I don't know the date, February
yeah,
12th,
to the next scheduled
next scheduled meeting.
motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.